I think you're wrong on both.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I think, I guess to summarize, I could restate this by saying I believe that God is the most evil character in all of fiction. That's pretty much my view when I read the Bible. It's like obvious to me that he's the bad guy in the Bible based on the things that he does. So, what do you think?
Well, um, if you're to judge God as evil, you kind of have to assume he exists in that way to say he's evil, which then means you can't really judge him in his full scope because he's God.
How's that follow? I think you can judge the character in any story, whether
Well,
they're real or not.
just like you'd be a natural being, a human, God would be supernatural. So you wouldn't have that bird's eye view of God. You couldn't.
Yeah, I
So
wouldn't have the same perspective that God would have, definitely. But all I've got access to is my own perspective, so I just make the best judgment call that I can. Like if I made up a God, for instance, let's just say that I just made one up, right? And I was like trying to write that the God was supernatural and was evil, and so I wrote that he like killed children and like used rape as punishment and stuff. I mean, that would be pretty evil, right? Like I think that that would be a good example of evil. And if it's
if that
fiction,
was
I mean, you just
man,
use your best judgment to the character that I created. Wouldn't you describe that God as evil?
no, because again, by definition of him being God, he couldn't be judged fully and correctly from the human perspective. I mean, man jacks off at 12, and by the time they're 18, they think they know something. A lot of them go to school, they learn formal education. It's really pathetic when you objectively look at it, trying to judge God.
I mean, everything that that you learn about God or anybody really passes through your own filter. Like I don't know why we would grant that God is good or evil without taking a look at some of the actions that God performs. Wouldn't you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, but the buck has to stop at some point. Um, are you a materialist?
I think so. Maybe, but probably.
Well, well, if that's true, couldn't I then say that the chemicals in your brain are making you think God's not real?
I mean, that's not completely inaccurate. That's pretty true. Like I mean, every thought that we have is a series of chemical reactions and neurons firing in the brain. Your entire thought process is just the brain working. Yep. I think I'd agree pretty much. Oh, hey, thanks to here for the snail. Guys, don't forget I take snails. That's my thing. I've never actually had as cargo, but I do like to rave them snails. Thanks to here.
I do agree with you, that some people are just not meant to know God. That's just not in their DNA. Some people, they'll kind of always be naysayers, but there is a spiritual component, and you know, it it's kind of like, if you go materialist, you have to be nihilist by definition,
I don't know
because
that you
as you
necessarily have
said,
to be a
it's
nihilist.
well, if you say as you did that it's basically random chemicals and neurons firing, it's kind of like there's not much point to it.
Well, I don't know that you would necessarily have to be a nihilist. That's definitely the route that I went, though. When I lost my faith, I did turn into a nihilist. And that's why my name is Lobes the Absurdist, because absurdism was my response to realizing nihilism. So, I mean, yeah, like, I think that we're thinking along the same lines, but I would just disagree about the fact that we can't judge God. I mean, we make judgments on every character or agent that we're presented with. Like, if I presented you with a God that saves everybody he can versus a God that tries to go off his way to kill people, you wouldn't have no intuition as to which one you thought was good or which one you thought was evil. You would make some kind of judgment call based on the values you currently hold. By the way, I don't know if you're aware or not, but like if you're off the app, I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to get this verse because I think it's a really pertinent.
Okay, I'll give you a little bit to get that verse. Take your time. I'm gonna engage with the chat a little bit. Oh my god, what the hell was that? Did you sneeze? My wife just sneezes. Sound like she blew her ass out of her britches. So, hey, 3 pips. Thanks for the heartbeat.
I could read like half of it, and then I'll probably have to go back to it. But it basically
What is it? I can
says
look it up. I have a
it's
Bible right here.
it's Isaiah 58,
Okay,
Isaiah 55, the eighth and ninth verse. It says, "For God's ways are not your way," or what's it?
sure. Okay, all right. So it said Isaiah 55. What's the verse?
It's 8 through 9.
Okay, I'll read it. So this says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Yeah, so this like is kind of going down the line of thinking where you have to surrender your intellectual thought when critiquing God. Like if he does something that you think is nice and loving, you can't really know God. Maybe he's being sadistic. And if he does something that you would think is sadistic and evil, you don't know God. Maybe he's like being an apparent maniac out of love. You don't know. I mean, we can't help but make these judgment calls, right?
Well, I think, some percolating doubts are natural because everybody's fallen, but in the same way that your mother and father are basically your God initially, they also brought you into the world. You can question them, but there a lot of it doesn't work basically. A lot of people grow up and they end up hating their parents because they think they know more. And you might know more, but some people let that like spirit of the intellect or pride they let it get a hold of them. And yeah, like some like for men examples, sometimes they just may be smarter than their dad, or maybe they wish their dad taught them something, but that's still the reason you're here. So you can only criticize them so much, and then you can multiply that by tenfold to God.
I mean, I think in order to be malevolent, you have to have created somebody to abuse as well. Just creating someone to exist isn't necessarily an act of love, especially with all the suffering that we see in the world. It seems like God would at best be indifferent to us because he's not stopping all the bad shit that's happening. And at worst, he would be sadistic for like causing it to happen potentially, or like knowing it's happening and seeing to it that it does happen. If he's like the first domino to fall, you know what I mean, in the causal chain, then he would know. If he's omniscient and omnipotent, then he would just know what's going to happen, and it would all be according to plan, including all the suffering and misery that we experience.
Yeah, but there again goes the nihilism, and it's a similar sentiment you hear a lot. I didn't ask to be here, and those type of people typically they do end up hating their parents, and they themselves end up very miserable because
I don't think
they
that I don't mean
they
to cut
they
you off,
lack
but
perspective.
I don't think that that's nihilism. Nihilism is just it like it doesn't like nothing matters basically. Like it's technically the etymology is the belief in nothing. So it's like
So,
as
but
far as existential meaning.
that would coincide with
Thanks,
that
DJ.
negativity, because if people are saying I didn't ask to be here, all you did was bring me unnecessary suffering. Yeah, those people they may be right even, but to lean into that, that's where most people basically never recover.
I mean, it's I think an
It's
honest
like there's you want
take
to
to
be.
hold. It's an honest observation, right? You see a lot of terrible things. I mean, what's the worst thing you can imagine that's ever happened? God watched it happen and arguably caused it. If like you could look at it in a way where he was like the reason it happened.
From your limited perspective, yes, maybe, but another analogy would be like an ant trying to judge a human.
I mean, if God wants to look good to us, I think he should give us more than an ant's comprehension of his actions. And if he does something that would seem uh, disgusting if anyone else were to do it, he ought to clarify and help us understand. Otherwise, people are going to come to the conclusion I have, where this God is evil for doing some of the things that he's done or allowed some of the things that he's allowed.
Well, I could see why many atheists think that. I'm sure that is not helped by the idea of going to hell. But I would just say, in response to that, in the same way you see a spider in your bathtub and you just wash it away and you don't even think about it, that's, I don't know for sure, but it seems to be that's how God operates.
Oh
And
yeah. Well, then God wouldn't love us, right? He would be we would give him the ick, and so he'd flush us down the drain. I mean, he wouldn't love us in that case for sure. Like, you brought up hell, so I guess you're someone who believes in hell potentially. I think that if God sends somebody to hell, depending on your definition, that would be an indicator that he's evil. Like if it's the version of eternal conscious torment, I don't think that that's just punishment for any crime or transgression that we could commit.
but again, God does not have to conform to human understanding and logic. He simply doesn't.
That might be so.
Like
He might not
you're
have
kind
to
of ascribing.
conform. He might. I mean, he might not have to conform, but all we've got is what we've got. So what are we supposed to do with it? I mean, if he's masquerading as an evil god and saying we should grant that he's good in spite of the evidence that he's evil, I mean, why would we do that? He's revealed himself in such a way to where he looks evil from a human's perspective. It's only rational for a human to conclude that he's evil. And
I
he would
don't think
be
so.
understanding of that too. Like God, if God gave us these mental faculties to try to understand him, he would understand us coming to the conclusion that he's evil. Like, yeah, I could see how you would think that watching children die of starvation or something and not helping them, how that would seem like it's sadistic. But there is a reason why I let them die. I'm just not going to tell you what it is, and that's going to make me look evil. But I don't care if I look evil to you humans. I mean, that's kind of what it seems like the attitude would be if that's the rebuttal.
Well, that's still you're caught up in like that everyone gets a fair shot at life now. That and you're missing the bigger point, which is the eternal life. The idea that God is sitting back and watching, he could be.
Mhm.
But but that's really man's sins. Like,
So
is
why
God
don't you
supposed to
think
make
that? Do you
everyone
think
perma
that
good?
everyone? Do you think that everyone ought get an equal shot at life? I think that that would be fair if everyone got equal shot, equal opportunity, rather than some people being born at a major disadvantage where they're almost guaranteed to die a miserable death at a young age.
Well, that goes back to the Garden of Eden. It was fine, and then man wanted more, so it didn't work.
So that affected the entire world's ecosystem.
Yeah, because if you're 100% happy in the Garden of Eden and there is no suffering, and then some Satan-like spirit tells you you're 10% happy, God just doesn't want you to know, and you fought for it. I mean, who else do you have to blame?
Sounds like that's something that Adam and Eve should maybe answer for eating fruit that was off limits. But what does that got to do with us?
It's encoded in the human DNA.
Why did God make it so that it would be encoded in our DNA? That seems like a dick move.
No, that's really an emotional argument
I mean, we're talking
because
about
again, you don't have to understand God all the way.
right, but like if the consequence of sin is now human DNA is fucked up, I don't think it needed to be, right? That God didn't have to make it that way. He could have made it so that if you sin, you are responsible for it and you should pay the consequences for the actions or whatever the consequences are. But your children, they have not sinned, so it's only right that they don't inherit some kind of fucked up genetic code. It's not their fault. They shouldn't be cursed. but God wants to do generational punishment. How's that fair?
It wouldn't be fair if nobody sinned.
But we would inherit this. You said this in our genetic code. So we're born with a predisposition to be prone to doing this sin, and that would be because of not just Adam and Eve, but God's response to Adam and Eve. God decided that when Adam and Eve ate this fruit that was off limits, like he knew they would, like it seems like it was a setup too, like he wanted them to. He would cause the rest of humanity to pay for it as well when he didn't need to. He could have kept it to Adam and Eve.
But why would you keep it to just them if they're basically everybody's grandma and grandpa? It's the
I mean,
same
do you
DNA.
think that like if your grandma and your grandpa, like your dad's parents or your mom's parents, if they went to a supermarket and ate some fruit that was off limits, do you think that you should have your DNA fucking changed because of that?
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because if that grandpa was to drink the wrong potion or liquid, the intoxicating, that one, that alcoholism, that gets passed down through the DNA. So if
Right,
alcohol,
and
so
yeah,
of course
and
sin
maybe
would
that
too.
shouldn't be the case too. But like, do you think that if you're sitting at home, you're playing Sly Cooper 3 Honor Among Thieves on PlayStation 2 because you're feeling nostalgic, and you find out that your grandfather ate some fruit at the supermarket that was off limits, and now people are to make it right, they're coming over to you and they pause your game and they say, we got to alter your DNA real quick because Pop ate some fruit that was off limits. I mean, isn't that a little ridiculous that you get punished for something he did?
But that's the way of life, just like some people have to deal with the addiction gene.
It doesn't need to be the way of life. And
But
I think
no,
that the
but like
example I gave is
alcoholism
ridiculous.
is in the genes, so it is, and
It
it's
doesn't
just a
need to
really good
be.
metaphor analogy. You
It
can't
doesn't.
remove
Well, it doesn't
alcoholism.
need to be. No, I'm not talking about. I was saying that mine was bad. Mine was like bad by design because I was trying to show you that if somebody eats fruit that's off limits, nobody's children should be genetically altered for that. Hey, thanks, Reckless, for that snail. I appreciate you.
But what do you mean should? Like this is just kind of this is folly.
Because why? I mean, why involve anybody else? You wouldn't. Surely you don't think that anyone other than someone who has committed a transgression should pay a price for that person's transgression, right?
That's actually how the law used to work years ago. I mean, it still is to this day.
I'm asking you, what do you think is fair? What do you think? What do you think is just? Like, if your dad were to kill somebody, for instance. Now, this is way more severe than. Oh, thanks, DJ. This is way more severe than. Oh, damn! It turns into a butterfly. Well, that's fucking cool. Thank you. So killing somebody is way worse, I think, than eating fruit that's off limits. So let's say your dad he killed somebody and it was like capital murder. He premeditated and he did this. Should you get any punishment for what your dad did?
No, but it doesn't matter because I've still sinned, and so has everybody else. So
Well,
even
not
if,
for not for yeah, but you would agree. You agree. So like you should
but
not be
that's in a
affected by what your
vacuum
dad did.
example.
No, it's a
That's
great
in a
example.
vacuum. If
It
there was a
doesn't. The
sinless
reason
person,
the reason okay, so with the Adam and Eve thing, the reason why you would have sinned is because you have a predisposition to sin because you inherit a sin nature. Like you said, the genetic code is altered because of this sin. It did not need to be. God could have made it so that they sinned and now they have the sin nature, but it does not affect future generations because he's so loving and cares about us. That would be more evidence that he's loving.
no, that would be a parent with a blind spot that's naive.
What?
That would be like letting your kid keep going in the cookie jar and like, I'm so loving, but I'm not going to punish them. Eventually, the kid will never learn.
What are you talking about? I'm talking about the genetic
You're
transfer
saying
of
if God just
sin.
forgave everything all
No,
the
I'm
time,
saying it. No, no, no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if God for the crime of eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. If he gave Adam and Eve a punishment and left all of their offspring out of it, he did not allow this sin nature that they gained to pass on genetically. He saves the rest of humanity from the sin nature. That would
Then
be
then the following
good.
generation would have sinned too. So it doesn't matter.
How
It would have
so?
happened regardless.
You can't know that.
No, because if you're in paradise and you sin, then you'll sin anywhere.
So it sounds like God created a situation where it's impossible for us to not sin.
No, the choice was made by man. And the serpent whispered too. It wasn't just eating an apple. It was
You,
trying to be above God. It was ye shall be as gods. That was the promise in the garden.
well, he said that you will become like God, knowing the knowledge of good and evil. Then God comes down and says, "Behold, they've become like us, knowing the knowledge of good and evil." So that was a true thing the serpent said, according to the text,
But it
anyway.
but
But
it doesn't
what I
work.
mean when I say that, you would say that God created a situation where it's impossible for us to not sin. I said that if sin nature is not passed down genetically, like you said it is, but if it wasn't, you said that we would still anyway. Because if you're in paradise and you still sin, then it doesn't matter whether or not you have the sin nature passed down. You're still going to sin. So God would have made us with like a promise in our nature we would sin, whether we have the sin nature or not. We're set up to fail.
I would compare it like being in the garden is like being a child in terms of naivety, and uh, just happiness. As long as children are naturally going to be very happy, and they don't know any suffering until it's brought onto them, and then they sin. But my point is simply, children are as if they're being in the Garden of Eden was as if you were a child. And what happens when people become adults? They're not perma happy. They're depressed because they think they know it all. And it's funny how that works. You know nothing as a child, and you don't care, and you're happy all the time. And then you get to be an adult, and you know this and that, and it doesn't even matter because you're less happy.
Is that our fault?
Um, yeah, I mean, basically.
So that's the fault of me, and that's the fault of you, is what you're saying.
Um, the sin from the suffering is, yes. It's the
But
suffering, or
so it's not like my fault specifically or your fault specifically.
well, okay, yeah, obviously it's originally Adam and Eve's fault, but
Right.
like I said, it doesn't matter. We would have done the same thing.
And how do you know that? I mean, it's like if we don't have the sin nature passed down, then obviously something would be different, right? We would be less privy to do it.
Well, again, though, if you just was to kneecap the sin DNA, so to speak, it's kind of an in a vacuum example. And the point of the Garden of Eden was it was the most in a vacuum example. It was literally take out all what's the variables, take out all variables of sin or evil or anything, and just let them be. And that's what it was, but it wasn't
But it
enough
wasn't.
for
But it
man.
wasn't. God put the serpent in there to tempt them so that they would eat the fruit.
No, it's just not everything is 100% perfect, happy go lucky. And that's
By
okay.
design. By design. Like, so then God did not create a
But what
perfect
would we,
place.
this is like The Giver, that book where they kind of grade everything up in the movie. You can't expect to be perma happy. That you'd be just like a humanoid android. You wouldn't even have a soul. You would just always being happy would be
Why
ridiculous. It's
can't
like
why
always
can't God give wait, why can't God create people who are perma happy and give them a soul? I mean, what are we perma happy in
he
heaven?
kind of does. Those are called what's the word? I guess highly autistic people or Asperger's. Look at them. That they're basically always
Are we
happy.
perma happy in heaven?
I am not sure. I would figure that it's beyond fleshly feelings, though. But I don't have a verse to say that. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. So God in the situation of Adam and Eve in the garden, he places the serpent in the garden so that the serpent would tempt Adam and Eve, so that Adam and Eve would eat of the fruit, so that he could curse humanity with original sin. That's how it reads.
yeah, but that's a lot of presuppositions. That's about
No,
four.
it's what's in the text.
But again, so like, what are you saying? You're saying, God, make it impossible for us to turn against you? How would that
No,
be logical?
I'm saying that what God did was he ensured that we would fail. He set us up to fail in
No,
this
he gave man the
situation.
choice, which sure you could call ensuring failure because
You
man's
said
flawed.
yourself that
But
in this state we would have been, or Adam and Eve would have been naive. If they're naive,
yep,
then they aren't privy to the full scope of the decision that they're making. They were tricked. You can't punish a child for being tricked, a naive child for being tricked, let alone their children or their children's children and so forth. That's ridiculous.
you can, and I'm not sure what other way to try to explain it. Because you're kind of repeating the same point.
I feel like I need to, unfortunately, because I'm not like getting through to you. God intended for all of what has occurred to happen, including the fall. Like this was always a part of the plan. If God's omnipotent and omniscient, then this was always a part of the plan. The serpent was there to ensure that Adam and Eve would be tricked into eating the fruit, and then God would, I guess, gaslight us into making it somehow our fault that we have this sinful nature. You don't control your own nature. You're born with the nature you have, and we don't control who we're born to. God allegedly does. So God decides our
It's, you
nature.
know what it's like? It's almost, I'll give a material example. It's almost like you're at a party and you're on a couple tabs of ecstasy, and someone offers you a third, but it's boof, it's laced, and then you pass away. Who do you blame? You got tricked. You have to blame
What are you
yourself.
What are you talking about? I don't see how that relates to what we're talking about
In
at
the
all.
same way you're in that kind of like above it all state, in that naive, just yeah, you're literally in a state of ecstasy. You're in a blissful state, a blissfully happy state, but you want more. That
Okay.
says something. And then if you
So
were to OD, it would be nobody else. It would not. Yes, the dealer may go to jail, but whose responsibility is that? It's the person that wanted more, and that's what man wanted in the garden. It was always more and more and more. So when you say God gave humanity a choice, and it's like a ploy, I mean maybe, but you can't just
no,
make
certainly.
people perma followers of God like that. What would the point be
Do you
if
think that
God did not allow
do you
people to
think
turn
that it's
again?
true when the Bible says every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord? Do you think that part of the Bible's true?
Yeah, on Judgment Day.
Yeah, so then I guess you would admit that you actually can, as God, make everybody say so, that you're God and worship you.
No, if he reveals himself in plain sight on Judgment Day, then they'll know for sure. But yeah, right now we're not really in that time.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like we're gonna get there anyway. We're gonna get to this point where God's made us all His subjects. But I don't see how this is relevant to the Garden of Eden being a setup.
What is not relevant? The like ecstasy part?
Yeah, I don't see how it's
Because
analogous.
you're perfectly happy and you want more. It's really not much more complicated than that.
If you're perfectly happy and you want more, is that so wrong?
Yes.
Why?
Because sometimes less is more. It's not like you can drown from too much water. There's a dosage that makes the poison, and you don't always want to be happy. Those people are called manic, bipolar, schizophrenics. Too much
I think
dopamine.
you could. So this is only because of the parameters God would have set up. You can drown from too much water because God decided that too much water means you drown. There didn't have to be a cap. God could have made it so that the world was perfect. And if the world is perfect and everybody's happy and it's all good, how could that possibly be bad?
But if the world is perfect, then God would make us slaves and not able to sin because there's no free will.
Well, there's already no free will. So what's the difference if
No,
there's
there is.
how is there free will?
Because you are able to do whatever you want in this physical realm. You basically are, as long as, within reason of what the government allows and, other people, you're allowed to do whatever you want, basically.
So that's a very it's a very surface level idea of free will. Like under that, yeah, like that, sure, but like obviously that's not what people are talking about when they say free will. If you can do whatever you want, I mean, I grant you that you can do whatever you want to do, but that's not free will. You're actually a slave to always only be able to do what you want, and you don't get to choose what it is you want. So you do what you want, and what you want is not something that's chosen. So you don't actually get to ultimately decide your own fate.
There would be proclivities. That's why I brought up the alcoholism. You don't have to drink it, but and ultimately, it's not even a materially rational point to take of, oh, my grandpa always down, granddad. I have a 4 out of 10 propensity, and the average person has a 2 out of 10 to be an alcoholic. I'm gonna drink. You don't have to. Some people, yeah, they have more so-called demons to get over in certain aspects, but that's just what it is.
I'm saying every decision, whether there's alcohol involved or not, any decision that you make where you want to do A, you have a choice between A and B, and you kind of want to do both, but you can only do one in this circumstance, right? So you want to do A and B, but you want to do A a little bit more, so you do A, and that's just how it works.
And you choose.
Yeah, you choose A, but if you want to do A more than you want to do B, you can't choose B. You'll always choose A.
And who else's fault would that be but yours? Or responsibility?
No, it's not yours. Intrinsically, it's not. In the moment, pragmatically, yeah, like you make the choice and that's your perception of it. But ultimately, intrinsically, you don't have any free will. Like you are following what you desire the most, and you don't get to decide what it is you desire the most.
This material view or materialist view you have, it basically, assumes that humans operate purely from the reptilian brain.
I'm saying that there's a chain of cause and effect. So yeah, even on the like atomic level, yeah, one atom bumps into another, and there's an effect that's deterministic and predictable if we know all the variables. So yeah, we would just be determined to do what we were always going to do. Do you think that God? Here's an example that I give sometimes. Do you think that God intended for every person who exists to exist, like you and me specifically?
I'm not sure because I wouldn't want to speak for God, but I mean, he okayed everyone that's here, yeah.
Like, because there's prophecies about end times and stuff. So
Yep.
obviously, like certain the future would have to be laid out, and certain people would have to be born in order to give rise to other people, right? So if God knows and intends for me to exist and for you to exist, that means he had to be in control of who our parents slept with and at what time, because it's a very specific sperm and egg cell that have to meet, and it has to be under the right conditions. He's probably even controlling the positions that they're fucking in because of, I guess, the sperm rattling around inside. Want to make sure it's the right cell. If it's a different cell, you'd just be one of your siblings. And if so, my parents, for instance, they met at work. That means that in order for my parents to get together, their work has to exist. So the founder of the company, God has to make sure that he succeeds in founding the company. He has to make sure that he fails in whatever he needs to fail in to build the character to accomplish that feat, but also his parents need to meet. So he's got to control their sex as well. And this goes for every individual who's ever existed. Every person who exists would be under such a deterministic causal chain just to ensure that they're born. There's no room for any free will under that.
The best word I could use to describe what you're doing is myopic.
What do you mean?
Just nearsighted, tunnel vision. And it's not even that it's refutable necessarily from a materialistic perspective.
So you would say it's consistent at least, right? Like, because you said it's not refutable. It's crazy. I was literally about to ask you, so what's your refutation? But if you're saying it's not refutable, I think that you're almost like conceding that my worldview is at least consistent, even if you disagree with it.
Yeah, but it's not. The arguments you're making in the materialist realm are coherent, sure, but what always happens is those people that don't believe in God, they basically, in one way, shape, or form, end up viewing themselves as God. And not that they're some, super entity, not even like that, but that they're the supreme, they call all the shots of their own life, and they tend to lose perspective. And I'll put it like this: whether it's chemicals or not, if that airplane gets a little too turbulent, people are going to start thinking about God. It can be chemicals or not, but all that the materialist logic, it does go out the window.
Do you know why that's the case a lot of the time? Not all the time, by the way, but do you know why that's a lot of the time the case?
Um, Not necessarily. I have a guess. My guess would be those DMT receptors are being activated, but you see what happens when those
It's
people try to.
so when in a hopeless situation, like this is there's a phrase that goes along with what you're talking about. The saying goes, there are no atheists in foxholes. Like when it's all on the line, you're placing your hope, your uh your survival instinct is shifting to the next life. And this is out of desperation. When you're in a hopeless situation, all you can do is pray, because why not? What have you got to lose? You get the plane crashes, or you get pegged, like, and it's lights out. You kind of have nothing to lose by giving it a shot. And you have everything to gain in that moment. So it's sort of like a Pascal's wager type thing, but that's just people being desperate in a dire situation because of their extreme survival instinct. That's all that is. It doesn't mean that there is actually a god. It just means that people are desperate and out of their mind.
Well, that wouldn't be sincere belief then. That would be hedging your bets, which, yeah, is Pascal's wager. But the
Hmm.
truly logical approach uh, for Pascal's wager would be to actually see the bigger picture, which is that you just can't know everything. You can try very hard, and that's a great thing to have a bunch of wisdom and knowledge. But um, the most logical thing to do would not be to dopamine max or independence max, and it would be to forego a lot of those fleshly pleasures. Because if if you convince yourself that you were the divine mover of your existence, um, eternity is a big price to pay for
Sorry,
spiritual narcissism.
I was still talking about the life or death scenario in the plane crash that you had provided. You're not, are you talking about something else now?
No, I'm saying that, like, when you were saying, I heard a guy say there's no atheist in a foxhole. Like, yeah, but that's not sincere belief. Neither is Pascal's wager. Like, you can't,
Mhm.
God would know, right? God would know you're trying to be like pseudo-logical. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
and that's pretty much what I say to that too.
now
Yeah.
I believe that
Yeah,
that would be very.
I agree with that. I think that we can at least both agree on that. Yeah, like, yeah, but that's why people will forgo their critical, logical thought when they're in a state of fight or flight, where they think that they're certainly going to die, or there's like a near certainty that they're going to die. They're not going to be thinking clearly. They're not their best selves in those circumstances. They're desperate to get out of the situation.
Well, I do think they're thinking more clearly than they ever have. I don't think it can ever be perfect because, man is flawed, but you let all that shit go if the parachute doesn't open or something. Or another example is like if you can't breathe, you don't care about anything else. And that, I guess you could say it like shell shocks the person. But yeah, there's always those like near death experiences, I guess, which they kind of they snap the pendulum back a little bit.
There's a one of my friends wants to come up here real quick and ask you a question. I'm just gonna. It feels like we're kind of bouncing all over the place a little bit, but this is Everlasting Godstopper. Oh, Godstopper, what did you want to say to guest?
Hey, buddy. Yeah, so I just the question I've got is concerning free will and on the topic that you were just kind of landing on about, Pascal's wager. Obviously God would know. Like I couldn't just fake it just to hedge my bets. God's going to see through that, right? If I'm presented on Judgment Day. So my question regarding the free will is this. Um, do you understand how my free will is being impeded because God remains hidden from me? I'm a lifelong atheist. There's a good chance I'm going to stay that way until I perish. And if I'm wrong and I'm there in front of him at Judgment Day, God knows what it would have taken to convince me all along the way. But he's for whatever reason has chosen to remain hidden from me. And so I'm not properly informed. Therefore, my free will isn't intact. I'm not, like that's part of free will. And in order for me to properly give consent, I'm going to need to be properly informed. I could still choose. I could use my free will to choose to not venerate or worship or follow this God. I could still use my free will to reject him. In fact, according to the Christian worldview, that's kind of the story with Satan, right? He knows God exists according to the narrative, the theology, but yet he still chose to rebel. So that's the question I've got is how does free will really fit into kind of what you're saying?
Because if he gave you the blueprint to get to heaven, that's like getting the cheat sheet to the test. You didn't do
But I'm
anything.
not convinced that's the truth, though. In fact, I'm convinced that it's absolutely not the truth.
But if God
None of
came
it
down,
makes sense to me.
but if God came down and showed you, logically you'd have no choice. Whatever it took to convince you, if he did that, you'd have no
To
choice but to believe.
to believe, sure, but not to accept like Jesus or something. Like you could still deny the God and be like, I'm not on your team, but you would at least know that he exists. You're not able to make the decision if you don't think he exists.
At the
But if
very
he's
least, I would have questions, and so that's what I'm saying is that like if God's not willing to answer these questions, he's not willing to show up for me, then I'm not really I don't have epistemic access to what it would take for me to make a properly informed decision.
Yeah, like
again,
we don't take this choice of siding with God, a relationship with him or not. We don't take it seriously because we aren't convinced that it's a real choice. Like if you were to say Santa Claus wants a relationship with you, and if you don't accept this relationship of love with Santa Claus, then he's gonna burn you in Krampus's dumpster fire or some shit. You'd be like, that's a funny. Why would I accept that? That's nonsense. It's not a real choice to you. You don't take it seriously. But if you proved that Santa Claus is real, then it's like, well, shit. Now I guess I should make a decision about whether or not I want to have this relationship with Santa Claus, right? So that's kind of what it's like with this. We don't think this is a real God. We don't think that hell's real. So it'd be very unfair for us to go there while we were not convinced that he was even a thing that was on the table.
well, I think your friend was saying just if God if God didn't give enough evidence, basically, so he couldn't make an informed decision,
Hmm.
which is really just plausible deniability. Because if God did show himself again, there's no room left for you to do anything. Like
Oh no, there is
there's no
though.
task,
There,
there's no nothing for you to do. Because if God showed you the
I
full scope of him, you'd have no choice but not to sin
Do you think
anymore.
that when he revealed himself to other people in the Bible, he took away their free will and they weren't able to like deny him, like Adam and Eve,
No.
or Satan, or Moses, or when Jesus was revealing himself to everybody? Do you think that they knew now he exists? Now I have no choice but to accept him. That can't be what you
Yeah,
think.
let me maybe retract that a bit. But um yeah, doubting Thomas, even he accepted Christ after a while.
Well, he had to get evidence, and Jesus was like, "Sure, here you go." But it's better to have no evidence, guys. Like next time somebody asks for evidence, shame them for asking for evidence and being critical thinkers and
No,
valuing
again, it's
facts
like
and
you
stuff.
did not genuinely get an A+ on the test if you got all the answers from ChatGPT. That's what you're asking for. You're asking for a
Why do I
spiritual
don't see why it's
ChatGPT.
valuable that we figure it out like it's some kind of scavenger hunt. I mean, this would be irresponsible. He's playing games with our eternal soul. We have to figure it out like it's a seek and find or something. I mean, that's very
No,
irresponsible to toy around with somebody's
no,
eternal soul like that. Just tell us the
most of
information that we need to know because our eternal soul depends on it. I would be very offended if he didn't give me the information necessary for me to make an informed decision.
that's both entitled and a very reductionist view.
I think I am entitled to this. Especially if he's offering it to everybody, wouldn't he want me to know that it exists? Thanks, DJ Hot Tub, for the grab.
No,
That's a
God
fun
does
thing.
not have to abide by your sense of right and wrong. That was the
Doesn't he
reason I
want
brought up
me?
Isaiah
Doesn't he want me
53.
to at least? Doesn't he want everyone to hear the gospel and believe that it's at least true?
Yeah, but the Bible's not for everybody.
If
I
he
mean, the
well,
Bible shows that.
if he
Or
wants
the
everybody,
yeah.
myself included, if he wants everybody, myself included, and Godstopper here, to believe that the gospel is true, then why is he not pulling out all the stops to at least make that benchmark? He's
Where did you get the
failing.
idea that he wants everybody?
You just told me that. I asked you and you said yes.
I can't know for sure, but yeah, I would say God would prefer that, but he's not going to like bend over backwards because some people are just born naysayers.
Because he doesn't care that much. He doesn't care enough to actually do anything about it. When he could. He just would rather not.
It kind of sounds like it kind of sounds like someone taking unemployment and not getting a job because you're saying the government doesn't care enough about you to help its
No,
citizens.
no, that's not analogous because at least I know the government exists and the job exists in that analogy. I don't believe that God exists. Hey guys, so we're gonna do a kick poll. We've been talking to Formally for a little while now. If you want to keep him up here, we'll just do a smiley face. If you'd rather move on to somebody new, then do the crying face. Yeah, make
and
sure you
while
click
that
the
poll is going
buttons.
on, I got one more quick question, if you don't mind, and then I'll hop down.
Okay. Sure.
Millie, are you familiar with Romans 9?
No.
Romans 9, verse 19. I'll start there. It says, "One of you will say to me, then why does God still blame us? For who is able to resist his will? But who are you, a human being, to talk back to God? Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, why did you make me like this? Does the potter have the right to make out the same lump of clay, some pottery for special purposes and some for common use?" And then verse 22, it says, "What if God, although choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the objects of wrath prepared for destruction?" That would be me, right?
Mm.
He created me, according to this verse, he created me specifically so that he could destroy me in the end on Judgment Day, when he would have known, like I said before, he would have known what it would take to convince me that he exists, that he loves me, that he wants a relationship with me, yet he remains hidden from me. So according to Romans 9 here, the only purpose why he created a non-believer like me was so that he could destroy me.
Yeah, like we're
And that doesn't
fireworks. He's
sound like a
gonna
just and merciful.
blow
Yeah.
us up and all and admire our destruction. Yeah. Anyway, man,
Whoa.
we did the results are in. They want to move on. Just like I guess mull that over. I don't want to keep going on with this when the results are in, but definitely come back. You were very cordial and everything. I think we disagreed on almost everything, but you were really pleasant. So thank you for being that way. He didn't have to be pleasant. A lot of people don't want to be. They'd rather be terrible and be like, "I'm a Christian. Here's a terrible behavior for you." But yeah, thank
Hey,
you.
I appreciate you letting me jump in and ask those questions. Appreciate you, buddy.
Oh, of course, yeah, Godstopper for sure. And say something in the comments real quick, Godstopper, so people can follow you. Godstopper's a pretty smart guy, very like smart dude. Okay, let's bring up. I wonder if this is the guy from Discord. We got Phoenix Parker coming
This
up.
is the guy from Discord. Welcome.
This is the guy from Discord. All right, cool. And you're Parker, right? You go by Parker.
Yeah. I
All
go
right,
by
are you-
Phoenix. I go by Parker. Whatever you want to call me. I'll
Sure.
just fucking dox myself, and my legal name is Dominic. So
Fair enough. You don't need to, but I'll. Anyway, you are at least 18, right?
yeah, I'm 26.
Okay. Well, hold that thought, 26 Parker. I'm gonna get a refill, and then I'll come back to you. So in the meantime.
Okay.
All right, Parker. So what did you
All
want
right,
to
yeah,
talk
no.
about?
I wanted to first of all take your invitation to a refill and grab my own refill.
All right, I'll play.
But,
I'll cue the music for you. Just kidding. The refill music.
Yeah, no. But I just wanted to talk about like the different interpretations of like Christianity and like kind of like express like okay, like I mean I could respond to the prompts because the prompts seem very like they seem a little bit rage baity, not like judging at all. I would do the same shit. I would say some like kind of inflammatory stuff to try to
A
get
provocative
views,
prompt
not-
gets you a little more engagement. I'm not trying to bait people
Yeah.
to rage, but I am trying to get people in here, and these are things that I do
Yes.
believe. So
Okay. So like, I mean, like, I'll just kind of like insinuate some shit. I'll just say that when it comes to the interpretations, especially of Genesis, I think a lot of it comes down to a kind of evangelical literalism that I don't think the earliest Christian communities embraced. I think that Genesis was always seen as poetic mythicism, and I think that it was there to express a deep truth about our nature, but not a literal truth about how the world came into being. So when it comes down to that, I think that like some people will say, well, Christians kind of they renegotiated what they thought of Genesis based on modern scientific understanding. But if you go back as far as Saint Augustine, who wrote in I think the 2nd century or 3rd century, he would talk about how like no, Genesis is not meant to be taken literally. He's regarded as a church father. I don't think that I don't think that we need to adhere to a literal interpretation of Genesis in order to be Christians, and I don't think that that's what early Christianity proposed.
Sure. So yeah, okay. I've heard that take before. I don't know how true it is. I don't think it's true, but I don't know enough about the topic to really refute it. I do think, however, it's beneficial, whether it's true or not, for Christians to believe that it's not meant to be taken literally, because I think that we can make a lot of
Yeah.
progress that way. Whether it was
No,
meant to
yeah.
be taken literally or not, I think that if you're gonna stay Christian, at least be progressive and embrace science and not be a magic believing nincompoop, right? I think that that's better for
No, I hear
society.
you. I hear you. I tell you what though, like that's not why I think, and I don't think that that's what the earliest Christians had in mind when they were embracing this interpretation. Because I would definitely encourage you to look into the earliest texts on this interpretation, this Christian interpretation of Genesis, especially from like church fathers like Saint Augustine. Augustine is so influential. Like I'm Catholic. I'll just out myself right now. I'm Catholic, and so a lot of Augustine's writings are highly influential on my tradition, but they're also very influential on even Protestant tradition and a lot of different traditions. So like Augustine is one of the earliest church fathers, so his word is going to reverberate throughout all of Christian history. And I think that because it has, it's not just him, but like others. Like he wasn't the first to kind of coin this, but he was someone who popularized it. So I think that this interpretation of Genesis is embedded in Christianity because one of the earliest church fathers, and even like the question comes from like where do you interpret scripture from? Does it stand on its own? As a Catholic, I doubt it, but I'm open to other interpretations,
Sure. Yeah,
but
because I
I
mean, I
just
know
don't see
that
why.
because I think the Catholic Church is like you just kind of follow what the leadership says, basically, right? For the most part, like
That's a
there's like a
pretty it's the leadership is informed by God himself, and it's also informed by the scriptures. Nothing the leadership says will ever contradict scripture. I know it sounds very, very convenient, but I think looking at it logically, you can see where people will negotiate and where people will understand it from a certain perspective. But
yeah.
I don't think that that is necessarily mental gymnastics, as many people will accuse us of.
I mean,
And I think that the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Oriental Orthodox Church and any church that can trace its roots back to the original Christian churches, the churches that like St. Paul was writing to, um, I think that those churches can have a greater sway in the interpretation of scripture than say a Protestant church that came around in like the 14th century.
yeah. Well, I don't really know or have much value in what the Catholic Church believes as far as its doctrine. I know that I've met some Catholics, and I don't know if this is like a Catholic thing or if it's like an outlier, but
Yeah,
I know some Catholics who believe in evolution and believe in the Big
I'm one
Bang,
of
and
them. Most
so
Catholics, I won't say all. There are some young Earth creationists among us, and there are some people who
okay.
deny
Well, at least
evolution.
there's
But
that. It seems like the Catholic Church seems to be getting with the times from time to time. They'll make some
it's an
revisions and stuff and
interesting
kind of
perspective.
adjust themselves to, I think,
I
in
mean,
order to stay
yeah,
relevant and not to have modern society be up in arms. I think that it's like a survival thing. They kind of have to
that's
conform
why
somewhat to like modern science and modern ethics as well.
I hear you. But like, are you sure that that's why? Because if that was the case, don't you think we would have like accepted like something like gay marriage by now?
I think that it's something that has to go under a gradual change. I think that if the Catholic Church continues doing this kind of thing, eventually they just will, because they've changed
See,
their mind on a lot of stuff.
that's interesting. So like I don't see how they've changed their mind on a lot of stuff. But I have also seen how the church does change its emphases on certain teachings throughout time. It's I think that it's easier to see from the inside than it is on the outside, and feel free, like it makes sense to be like, oh, you're just kind of indoctrinated, you're just kind of like making all these gymnastic like jumps in your mind. And I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying that like that
No, well, I mean,
that's an
so here's
easy
here's my
assumption to make.
thing, right? Like, I don't like whether something's literal or metaphorical or whatever. I'm not convinced of any of it. So the
Yeah,
conclusion you
yeah.
come to is sort of meaningless to me. I just want to know what your position is, and I might be curious as to why, like doctrinally, but more so, I'm more interested in the foundation that people have, like more philosophically. I'm not
Yes.
a very history, like I told you in Discord. I'm not a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
historically knowledgeable person or scientific. I know some fun trivia about certain niches, but I think I'm just a well-spoken layman, right? I think I'm a critically
Yes,
thinking
yes.
layman.
Dude,
So
yeah.
that's pretty much how I
I'm a
view myself.
layman in the most like like I am not clergy. I'm a fucking
Yeah.
layman as a
Sure. Well,
Catholic.
then we can be a couple of laymen's talking about this. So, what in the
Absolutely.
Bible do you think? I guess the Old Testament is what you brought up. What in the Old Testament do you think is true, or do you think the whole thing is just a bunch of metaphorical bullshit?
Yeah, I'm gonna come at it. I'm gonna try to. It seems like you want to get to the root of it, so I'm gonna try to give you the root of it. I think that there was historically a man who was Jesus, and I think that he did come and give his teachings, and then he was crucified and died, and then he rose again from the dead. And then I think that after rising again from not even after, before rising again from the dead, he founded his church on Saint Peter. He said to Saint Peter that you're the rock that I'm going to build my church on. And so that holds a lot of weight in my community, and so we tend to rely on the idea that Jesus invested his authority into Saint Peter, who was crucified upside down in Rome and established the church in Rome. And so we trust the church in Rome, not just the church in Rome, but the church abroad. But in order to be a part of the one true church, you have to be in communion with the church in Rome, because Jesus founded his church on Peter, who is the rock, because the name Peter even means rock. So and there's a lot of like depth into that, and there's a lot of like controversy into that, but that didn't I don't think that the controversy really arose until the Protestant Reformation. Before that, people were pretty, in the West at least, were pretty consistently like, okay, the Catholic Church is the church, and then there's the other church, like the Eastern Church, and they have apostolic succession. So I regard them more. I regard them as more historic than something like Protestantism or
Well,
Calvinism or Baptism.
what about stuff in the Old Testament? Because the reason I asked is because you were saying that largely in at least the Genesis account, you think it's a lot of metaphor and stuff. So I was wondering what
Yeah, yeah.
in that whole section, that Old Testament, do you think is meant to be taken literally?
Okay, yeah. I'm not an expert and I'm not even a novice in this, but I will say that I think that whenever we look at a historic text, we should look at the genre that it's written in. And even if I were coming at it from an atheist point of view, and I know that this might be a bit controversial because I'm not an atheist, but I do believe that if I were coming at it from an atheist point of view, if I looked at the first like 12 chapters of Genesis, I would recognize it as a mythological kind of interpretation of how the world came to be. I would not recognize it as something that the author or the authors were trying to convince people that this was a historical account. I would recognize it as something that, okay, we're trying to express a spiritual truth here. We're not trying to tell people a historical account of how the world
But my
came to
question
be.
was, what do you think in the Old Testament is meant to be taken literally?
I would say I would say certain parts of historical books, like let's say Chronicles or Kings, first and second, of course, like certain parts of those would be meant to be taken historically, but there would also be room for, let's say, mythological, in our modern terms, exaggeration, things that would be meant to emphasize certain truths without necessarily being like a historical account. Let's take a secular example. Obi-Wan Kenobi tells Luke Skywalker that his father was killed by Darth Vader. Okay, is that a lie, or is that a truth that emphasizes different things in a, to express something?
Well, so I think that would have been him being cheeky and trying to protect him from the truth. So in a sense, it would be a lie. But he's like
Yes.
uncomfortable with
Okay.
doing a full lie, so he's like
Yeah.
being coy. But what about? So 'cause I want to talk about something that you think is true in the Old Testament. Do you think like maybe the
Yeah.
Exodus is true? That whole situation with Moses and the plagues and all that.
Yeah. I think it's essentially true. I think the essence that the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt, and Moses came and freed them and drew them out of Egypt. I think that essentially is true. I like, you can go into like, I don't want to assume, but I like, if we go into the numbers of people that came out of Egypt, I would tend to interpret that as something that is exaggerated, not in the sense of just for exaggeration, but in the sense of like they want to express how massive that this movement was.
What about the plagues? What do you think about the plagues?
I think the plagues were something that literally happened, but I don't think that it was something that was unique to that specific year. I think that if we look at the historical records of Egypt, and if we look at the things that happened during this time period, I haven't looked too deeply into it, but like there is reason to believe, as far as I'm concerned, that tornadoes and things like that could bring up frogs into this land, and like there were certain plagues and certain like natural phenomena that could explain the plagues in Egypt. I
Hmm.
would personally believe that God would have influenced this particular time period to maybe more emphasize that, and maybe it was worse during that time period, but these plagues, as supernatural as they might sound to our modern ears, are things that would have happened in Egypt regardless.
Okay. So like, what about in chapter 12, starting in 29, where it says, "At midnight the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of
Mm.
Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat at his throne to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of the livestock." What do you think about that?
I would say that that is something that happened, and I would say that it was not uncommon, especially in that age and in ages to come, that infants would die in childbirth. That's
Well,
not an uncommon
this
thing.
according to like so the way that this reads in the narrative is
Yeah,
Moses says, "Let my people go," basically, or else then these plagues will happen, and as a result of Pharaoh not doing so, these things come to pass, and what it says is that the firstborn of basically everyone in Egypt, including the animals, on that night
yeah,
died. Like it says, the Lord struck them down. So, do you
right,
disagree
right.
with that, or do you not think that the Lord came and struck down all the firstborn in Egypt?
Yeah, so there are multiple interpretations based on, Catholics are allowed to have, but I do want to say my personal interpretation is that this was not God specifically acting on people. This was God just he didn't protect people from natural things that would have happened, if that makes
So,
sense.
so it's not okay. So then it would not have been a direct retribution or result of Pharaoh saying, "I won't let the people go." Like God, like it just so happened that on that night, by random chance, all of the firstborn of everyone there, including the animals, all just mysteriously died, and God would have stopped it. But he said that, but Moses said that if you don't let the people go, then this will happen. But I mean, it just seems like that's if we're invoking the supernatural and God in this whole story, it seems more reasonable that what it says is just what happened. I obviously think it's a mythology, but
Okay.
in the narrative, like there's this whole like the reason this is happening is for this. Like you've got to let the people go, or else this will
Yeah.
happen. Then the people weren't let go, so that happened. But it sounds like you're
Okay.
saying it's common for like the firstborn of everybody to just miraculously die, and all at once, from time to time in Egypt, it would just happen. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I mean, this is like a really crazy one.
I mean, I think it's helpful to explain my interpretation because when it comes to this, first of all, I think that throughout the Old Testament and throughout even maybe even the Bible, it talks about the idea of God's sovereignty in a way that I think is very historically it's historically Semitic. The idea that God is sovereign over all and that God kind of causes everything to happen, I think is what these people at that time kind of believed.
But this
And
specific action, I mean, in this set of plagues, this is
yeah,
like the 10th plague. So,
yeah,
according to the narrative, it's as a result of, but you're saying it's not as a result of the him not letting the people go. Like supposedly, if there were no slaves to be freed, and this narrative didn't play out, these plagues would have still just naturally happened regardless. Is that kind of what you're trying
that's
to
a
say?
good no. That's a good question. That's something that I will have to reflect upon because I don't know because a part of me wants to say that it was a natural repercussion of Pharaoh's wicked like deeds, his unwillingness to let the slaves go. But at the same time, a part of me struggles with the idea of God allowing like innocent people to die.
To be
So I
fair,
struggle
it
with
does
that.
also
Yeah.
say that it says it does also say that God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and it says before the plagues that he
Yeah,
tells
that's
Moses that he will harden his heart so that his glory might be known through the signs and wonders. So he wants to, like according to the what's written in the story, um, if you just do the plain reading of the text, he's saying he basically just wants to flex, and he's not going to let him make the right
right,
decision. He's going
right.
to
I
force him
think
to make the
that's
wrong decision so that he can flex. And then he flexes.
yeah.
But hey,
Yeah,
I've got
I
actually
think
somebody
it's
who wants to
yeah.
come up who I think this person is pretty knowledgeable about this part of the Bible. Pretty sure they're Jewish, if I'm not mistaken.
Rav, I was
Rav,
hoping it was him. I'd
yeah.
love to talk to you, brother. Man, that like not brother like in a faith sense, but like brother in like a human sense and like you've helped me. Like I love you, man.
You guys are both great. You're both awesome. I just wanted to
Thank you.
offer two things. One here. So first of all, I think like one thing that you were just about to touch on, Lobes, is that Pharaoh thinks he's a god. So like within the Egyptian construct, Pharaoh is a god. And so there's this sort of so first of all, the first 5 plagues are Pharaoh choosing on his own accord to not let the people go. And the second 5 is God hardening his heart, basically saying, because there's a moment where Pharaoh balks and says, yes, you can go. And then he reneges on that. And then God's like, all right, like that's it. And then it says, hichbadti. In other words, it says he hardens his heart, but you could also translate it as he honors Pharaoh's heart. He's like, that's your heart.
Yes,
We're going to make you do that. And so it's not a great interpretation, just to be perfectly honest, but it is an interpretation. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that like you can also read this text like I don't know about Phoenix, but I think Lobes and I both agree that the Exodus didn't happen in the way that the Bible says that it happens, and that it is actually an allegory or even an apocalyptic allegory for the experience of the Babylonian exile, in which case Pharaoh is King Cyrus, and this story of the Exodus story is sort of the opposite narrative of King Cyrus allowing the people to return. But it is a sort of the negative rendering of the leaving Babylon story, just in opposite or in opposition or in compendium with the Chronicles version, if that makes sense. And I'd be curious. I know that's like a very deep track that's going like taking a nosedive into it. But
Thank you so much, because like Cyrus was like, I don't want to like step on what you're saying, but like Cyrus was like considered like one of the Mashiachs, if I'm not mistaken. Like he was someone who was considered an anointed of God, even though he was not a Jew, and he restores like the people, and he gives like the temple. He at least like he at least helps the people come back to the
yeah,
temple. So I really
yes.
appreciate that. Yeah, no, I
So, but
like
but
yeah.
Phoenix, what I'm saying is that while it is a good thing that Cyrus is allowing the Jews to leave, it's also Babylon that is um, like I think that honestly the best analogy comes from a quote that I found in my rabbinic thesis research, where a woman who was recently freed from American slavery says, "This is our Exodus moment, and Abraham
Mm.
Lincoln is our Pharaoh."
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, dude, like, I'm gonna like honestly like just kind of spill my soul a little bit. Maybe it's because I've been drinking, but like I went to Washington D.C. and I went to the freaking, the it's basically a
MLK
temple.
Memorial.
No, the Lincoln Memorial.
The Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah, and I saw him sitting in that chair, and I saw like the words around him, and it wasn't because I wanted to worship him. It was because I wanted to worship, in a sense, what he was about, which I thought came from God. There was a there was a there was a moment where I was tempted to just like kneel down and just like ask for Abraham Lincoln's intercession in like our country and our nation, because I really think that, as a Catholic, I believe in praying to the saints, and I'm like, okay, I
Yeah, but
don't,
what I'm saying, Phoenix, what
yeah,
I'm saying is Lincoln wasn't a saint.
okay,
Like we tell ourselves that Lincoln was a saint, but in
okay,
reality, he was a pharaoh. He was
oh,
a
okay,
pharaoh. He didn't
okay,
really want to let the slaves go. He would
okay,
not have
no,
let the slaves go if it would have preserved the Union. In fact,
mm,
Abraham Lincoln's first question after emancipation was, how can we put all of these slaves on a boat and send them back to Africa? You understand what I'm saying?
okay, that's a good point.
Lincoln
That's a
was
good
not
point.
the
He
great
wasn't the
emancipator that
savior. He
people think
wasn't
he was.
okay.
Yeah.
No,
And so just as
that's a
Cyrus,
good point. We
Well,
see history like in a very like tinged light because of our upbringing, I would say. So I'm open to hearing that.
I'm
Absolutely.
so sorry, a God to himself, and that, yeah. Anyway, I apologize, Lopes. Thanks for having me, man.
I think you cut out. I don't know why you're apologizing, but yeah, thanks for coming up. That was insightful, man. Appreciate you, Rob.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can kind of respond a little bit um, to Rav's understanding, and to be fair, there are many Catholics who will absolutely say that the Exodus didn't literally happen; it was just an allegory. But I do think that one of the things that brings me into the other camp is that the idea that I don't think Jews would, if they were going to make up an origin story for themselves, I don't think that they would choose, or any people would choose, that okay, we were once slaves and then we got freed only through God, and we had to like go on this journey in the desert. Like it doesn't seem, yeah, the somebody in the comments just said the criterion of embarrassment. In that time, it would be very embarrassing for a people to claim that their ancestry came from slavery, and I think we see that in the New Testament, a kind of disowning of this slavery. The idea that you know this is from the New Testament, so Rab might not agree that this happened, but I think that there were Jews who denied that they were ever anybody's slaves. There were Jews that said we were the sons of Abraham, and we were never slaves to anyone for any reason. But Exodus seems to deny that. And to be fair, I'm open to seeing where or why Jews would deny that when the Exodus story seems so integral to Jewish history and Jewish, religion.
Yeah, no, to be honest, Parker, um, you want to have a conversation with me that I'm just not really versed enough in to have about like the history and the potential meaning behind some of these texts. I'm so far
Yeah.
from a history person. I'm not a biblical scholar, and I'm very indifferent as to what was intended when it comes to these things, because I'm like, whether the
That's
scholarship is
fair.
that it happened or if it didn't happen, I'm not going to believe the magic in it. I don't think that there's
You're
like,
more of a philosophical person, and I
yeah,
if I could, I would like to ask you, what are the philosophical things that makes God impossible? And maybe we have different ideas of what God is or
okay,
who God is. And
sure.
and then
So
like how can we move from there?
fair. So all right. So like the main reason why I became an atheist is because I could not demonstrate that God existed, so there was a question mark. And because I didn't know, that meant I was not a theist, which makes me an
Okay.
atheist. And I kind of realized that. But recently, I of course heard the argument against the creation of time, and I think that I don't know how it like how it is fallible. It seems like there can't be an ultimate creator God with this particular argument against creation of time. Have you heard it before?
I haven't, but I can try to infer, and I think we talked a little bit about this through
Right, yeah, I
Discord.
think I
I'm glad we
mentioned it to
did.
you. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like um time is a change from one state to another. That's what like when
Okay.
change
Okay.
happens, that's the passage of time. So a
Okay.
state that is timeless or otherwise atemporal, if it goes from being a timeless state or an atemporal state to being a time state or a temporal state, it was never really atemporal to begin with because the atemporal cannot change.
Oh.
It can't change, otherwise it would be temporal. So the
Okay.
atemporal cannot change. If you have no time, there can't be time. Or if you have a timeless
Okay.
state, it could never be anything else other than what it is, lest it be time. So time would be
Okay.
the necessary precondition for any creation. And if what we know about
Oh. Okay.
relativity is true, then if you have time you also have space. And if you have space-time, I mean, that's the universe. So God
Okay,
would be
yeah.
completely just void from the equation. It would like this. If
Mm,
this is accurate, then it would just like negate, or sorry, it would necessitate that the universe has always existed.
okay. No, I really appreciate that because I want to like express I want to express my limitations in that I haven't looked too deeply into the idea of what my tradition calls creation ex nihilo, which is Latin for creation from nothing.
Yep.
But I think that that is a very central part of our tradition that God creates all from nothing. And it doesn't, in my tradition, we don't try to explain that. We try to say, this is beyond our explanation. This is something that it's like trying to, as I say to most of my secular friends, it's trying, if you were to explain to your dog why you're paying your taxes, your dog would never understand how or why, what that means. They would only understand, they would see you sitting at a desk like writing or typing something, but they would never understand the intricacies of it. So when it comes
Hmm.
to like certain truths, I see it like that. I see, okay, there are certain truths that God can express to us in our limited state, but He does give us reason to trust Him and to hope that He has our best interests at heart. And I see from your eyes that you're going into a lot of you're going into a lot of like, okay, what about this? And I want to hear that, but I do want to say to focus on the first question. Um, I guess like it would come from this idea of trust or faith, as I would call it, and I would say that it's not baseless. It's not just this like, oh, I wish or I hope. It's not just this fruitful thinking. It's more so like, okay, God came to humanity in different ways throughout history, and in the most influential way through Christ throughout history. And so he's expressed that not only does he want our best does not only does he have our best interests at heart, but he also is willing to go through the most brutal suffering for our best interests. So
Okay.
that's something that I'm willing to,
So, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like this is the first time you've really heard it, so it's fair enough if you don't really know what to say as a refutation. I think that's fine. Definitely think about it and just think about it over and over when you're going to sleep. And really just mull it over, right? Because I cannot think of a way to refute it, and I would love to hear refutation. I think it would be the most interesting thing. Um,
Yeah,
but like
remind me what your point was. I'm sorry.
it was
I
that
just got
time.
too
It was
deep.
that time cannot be
Okay.
created. It just by its
Okay.
own
Okay.
nature, it disallows that. So if
Okay.
God
I
cannot
have
create
like I have
time,
a very amateurish refutation, but if you're willing to hear an amateurish
okay, yeah,
refutation,
that's fine.
okay, it's amateurish, but basically I see time. So we kind of agree that time is a measure of change.
Time is the change itself, and we
It's
measure it
change. Okay.
by like measurements of time, like seconds and stuff, minutes.
Okay. Okay. I think we're in agreement.
Because like I'm talking
And
about
okay.
time, that's like a part of the fabric of the universe, space time, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, no, space and time, as Einstein talks about, like they're
Hmm.
relative and they're
Yes,
connected.
yes.
So yeah, so when it comes to space time, the idea in Christianity, I think, is that God is, was, and always has been. So God is kind of this eternal thing, and God kind of affects he brings into being space time, which is not an eternal thing, and which is subject to change. And I think that throughout physics and science, we have proved that space time is at least subject to some change. I think that space time is physical.
It can, yeah, it can be warped by the other
Yeah.
fundamental forces such as gravity, um, and
Yes.
probably other ones too. I'm not like a
The
physicist or anything.
electromagnetic force and stuff like that, like, right? Or
Yeah, that's probably one of them. I mean, I know that's one of the forces. I don't know how much it
yeah,
affects
yeah,
space-time, but yes, like
yeah,
the Higgs field,
yes,
obviously, it gives mass to particles and stuff, and so that would interact with the gravitational field, and that would warp space-time, where you get time dilation and all this crazy shit. So yeah,
yes,
like,
yes. All the wonderful what's it called? Interstellar stuff.
yeah.
But
But this is like,
yeah.
so if time is the change, and something that's timeless cannot change, then how would God create the time?
Yes. So I'm gonna like be real with you and say that I don't know, and that most like I don't think most people in my church would say that they know, but they trust it because like I mean, in a way, like we can relate this, I think, to secular science, in the sense that scientists will propose theories, and they will figure, and it's not baseless, it's based on like scientific data and everything, but like they don't know, and we're trying to figure, and I'm not trying to make a false equivocation.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to say that we don't know, and at any in any field of knowledge, I think we will always come to a dark horizon where we don't know the answer, but we trust that there is logic behind it. And so when it
Yeah,
comes to some of the
sure.
faithful stuff, that's where I come from.
Well, you're right. It sounds like you don't like. I mean, this again. This is like the first time you're hearing this. So
Yeah.
if like you don't have a reputation for it, that's totally understandable. And if you want to still, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to just freaking kick your faith because you heard an argument one time on TikTok. So that's
Right, right.
reasonable for you to still maintain your faith in spite of not being able to refute it. I think that's fair. Other people won't be so kind, by the way, about that. But
Yes. No, you're
um,
you're you're super kind. I want to say that, like the way you express yourself in your lives, it has always, I've only seen a few of them, but like it's been like, okay, this guy like really actually cares about what's true,
yeah.
and he's
Daniel
actually
Green is
like
another
cares about
one.
other
If you
people.
haven't heard of him, he's fantastic
Okay.
too. Um,
I'll
he's
look him
very
up.
like
Daniel Green. He's on
he wants,
TikTok.
yeah, he wants his primary target audience is Christians. He wants to reach Christians and have an open dialogue with them.
Okay, I,
So
I I will look into him, because
yeah,
I want
Daniel
people who
Green.
are like,
He's way bigger
like
than me. He's got
that.
like 10 times my audience. Um,
That's
so
okay.
anyway, but do you want to hear?
I like
Do
your
you want to
lights.
hear a common refutation that is? I think it's a pretty commonly Catholic refutation to this, and why I think that this
Okay.
refutation doesn't work. So
Okay.
the Catholic, as far I understand it, and I don't know if this is necessarily their view, but I've heard Catholic people say it. Um,
Yeah.
is that God is eternal. He's an eternal being. So time does not apply to him in the same way it applies to us. Rather, it doesn't apply to him at all. He's timeless. So he is pure act. He's no potential. He's all actual. So
Yes.
he's the
St.
all
Thomas Aquinas.
actualizer.
Yes.
Right, Aquinas. So he's in a constant uh eternal state of act. There's no potential for him
Yeah.
to change at all. Period. So that would mean that he's eternally creating the universe, right? He's in a constant eternal state of
He's
creation
he's
of the
making it
universe.
so that the whole universe can exist, and without him, it
Be
can't
the
exist.
grounding, yeah. Now, but if he's like eternally creating the universe, that means that no matter how far back in time you go, he's creating the universe. So
Well,
That would mean
I
that
don't know
there's
if I would.
never a
Yeah, I
time when the
don't.
universe doesn't exist.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah. I don't know if I would like the phrasing. He's eternally creating the universe. It can be understood in a true sense, but it can also be understood in a false sense in that like the universe has always existed as soon as like God as like it doesn't make sense to say this because he's always existed, but like the idea that like God's existence creates the universe. Excuse me, sorry. That is something that is, I think, kind of refuted in the text. It's said that God freely chose to create the universe. He didn't have to create the universe.
So this
So
is,
that's
but like when you say that, that sounds like you're applying time to God, where he made a
why?
choice.
Why though?
Right,
Oh,
so
okay. He made a
he made a
choice.
choice. He
Yes.
went from a state where he did not want to create the universe to
Mm.
now he wants to, and from wanting
Okay.
to
Okay.
actually
Yes.
doing it. So he's going through a
This is
change
gonna
of
sound
states.
like
He's
a
thinking and processing information.
with how deep you are considering this. I want to say this is gonna sound like a fucking cheeky kind of loophole, but I will say that the idea that God creates the universe, I don't think it necessarily means that he had a change in him. I think that it means that from our perspective, because God is always communicating to us through our human limited lens. I think God basically he always meant to create the universe, and he created the universe, but it's not like he went from a point of not wanting to create the universe or not creating the universe to create the universe. It's something for me that is beyond my comprehension, is beyond human
Right.
comprehension.
No,
And I
I
think
just
that
want to point
that's, yeah,
out
no, that's a
that
bit of an easy way out,
you
I
are
will say.
using tensed language. He always meant
Yes,
to create the universe,
because
and
we're human. How else can we
right. But I think that like
say this?
to say that well we're human, right? We're human and we have a human understanding we can't understand. I think when we as human beings can't understand something, that means we lack a justification in believing it's true. Right?
Okay,
Like if we were
okay.
meant
No,
to if God wanted us
chill.
to believe that something's true, he would make us
I
capable of
fucking hate these
understanding
comments,
it.
by the way. I fucking love your respectful responses, and then these fucking comments are like, well, you say this and you say that. You know, we see this in all lives, but it's just annoying. You know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But yeah, don't you think that like I agree with you, like there's toxic comments everywhere. But don't you think that if God wants us to understand something, he'll give us the capability of understanding it. Like I think that
Oh, okay, okay,
God does
yeah.
have like this doctrine in the Bible where it's like lean not on your own understanding. I think that's what a con man would say. Where like I don't have like if you can't understand
Yes.
this, don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Just trust me, bro.
Don't worry about it. Trust me, bro. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Like what he
absolutely. And
says to
that's something that
doubting Thomas, where he's like, "Here's your evidence,
Okay.
but next time somebody asks for evidence, guys, like it's better to not have evidence. I'm gonna squash this seeking for evidence
Yes, yeah,
nonsense
no.
right now. You
I
shouldn't
hear
want
that. I hear
evidence."
that.
And it makes it very
I
suspect to me.
Yes, no, I hear that. Can I ask respectfully, what tradition do you hail from? Like
I was
what were you like
Baptist.
kind of born into? You're Baptist. Okay. This is I feel like a dick.
They're
But
atheist
like
factories, I know.
I just think that like there's a lot of Baptist stuff that is, you know, if you go into like the apostolic, whether it's Catholic or Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox, or no, Eastern Orthodox and Orthodox are the same. Sorry, Eastern Orthodox or Oriental Orthodox or the Assyrian Church of the East, if you want to go that far. I think that their understandings of these things are more deep and more rich than any Protestant understanding can offer.
I'd
I
agree.
think
The
that
Protestant understanding
yeah,
is, I think, very incoherent. That's one of the reasons why
yes,
it's like
and
I
that
couldn't
that
do it anymore.
frustrates me. I love my Protestant brothers and
I
sisters,
don't
and
think that the
sometimes they
Orthodox or Catholic view are coherent either, but I think that at least
yeah,
I've had better, more intellectual conversations with Orthodox people and
yes,
Catholic people, although they've been the most conceited, I think. But when the Protestant is conceited, they're like it sounds like they just fell out of a trailer park. They're just yelling nonsense. At
they
least
were
like when
just
the
like
Catholic and
telling
Orthodox
what their
person is
parents
conceited,
say.
at least when the Catholic and Orthodox person is conceited and talking at me, I can't understand what they're saying because it sounds like they're smart rather than they're speaking complete nonsense. At least there's
Yeah,
that,
and
you know. But like that doesn't do anything
I
for me.
really
I'm not
hate that.
helped by
Honest,
somebody. I'm not
yes,
helped by somebody who just like owns me. It's like I
yeah,
owned you, I won, I'm out of here. I'm
yes.
like, well, I don't even know what the fuck you were talking
What the
about.
fuck
So
is that
like,
about? No,
all that you did was
absolutely,
make
no, no.
you made your side look like an ass,
You've been a
and
Phil
I didn't
bro,
learn
and
anything from it.
thank
I
you,
just
I
learned that you
guess.
guys are dicks. So
Yeah,
that's all I learned. So
exactly. No, exactly. I fucking hate that because I think there's so much more to these traditions than just being a Phil bro and just being like, oh, I owned you philosophically, so then I don't have to answer any of your other questions. It's like if you
mm,
really want somebody to come into the fold, you try to express things in a way that they understand, and it's not like a from a conceited place. It's from a like, hey, I understand that you're understanding this in a different way. Let me try to like not impose
yeah.
but introduce you to this other understanding, and hopefully you'll see it. But like it like so many people, like I had some ortho bros come up to me in a live and tell me like i'm I'm wrong for not fasting in the way that they fast. And
Hmm.
it was just so like even if they're right, it was expressed in a way that was so demeaning and was so like not interested in my like well-being, that it seemed like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
why should I even
People have their
pay attention to you?
unjustified dogma and they push it on you. I
Yeah,
mean, this is
yeah,
just a common thing in
yes.
religion. You know, people have
Mhm.
they're like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm right. Otherwise, I wouldn't believe the things
unfortunately.
that I do, and you have to believe the things that
I
I do,
really
or else. Like,
I think I love my Protestant brothers and sisters, but I think that they have impose this idea that you have to believe all the right things and that's what gets you to heaven. And from a Catholic
it's
perspective, it's
ironic.
like, no, you can believe in all the right things. The demons know all the right things. They know exactly what, like, they know more than we know about God.
Well, there's
And
also, as far as I know, there's not a salvation plan for demons, too. So it's kind of
there's
like
not, but
I would be
that's,
bitter if I were a demon and there was no salvation plan. It's like, what do you mean
well, yeah, no,
a
I can
human
talk
being can
about that.
be a serial killer and all I did was walk out one day when I disagree
Yeah.
with you firing my friend Lucifer and
Yeah,
I don't have
no.
a what do you mean like this is not fair. This is not fair.
No, no, absolutely. If that's
I
the
would be
case,
butthurt.
then yeah, that's kind of no. If that's the case, then that's unjust. In my understanding of it, the demons slash angels from my perspective, angels and demons are the same kind of being. They're just
Hmm.
on different sides of the field.
That was my
Um,
view too. Real quick, we've been talking
yeah,
for a while. I'm enjoying the conversation, but I want to check in with
appreciate. Yeah,
everybody. So I'm gonna do
yeah,
a
no problem.
poll here. Guys, if you want
I
the
hope they
conversation to
want.
continue with
Yeah.
Parker, do a smiley face. If you'd rather move on to another guest, click the crying face. We've been talking for a while. I think you're great. Um, we're not really. It seems like we're having some respectful disagreements, but I mean, I'm enjoying the
Yeah, yeah.
conversation. So we'll see. We got like 40 seconds on the thing.
No, I appreciate that. It seems like most people want me to leave,
Well, make
unfortunately,
sure,
but
guys, that if you vote, you have to click the actual button. Don't type an emoji in the chat box. It won't register.
yeah. I just want to say before I think I'll have to leave soon, but I I really love talking to you, man, and I would love to talk to you in a space that doesn't rely on the votes of people. I love democracy. I think it's the best form of government besides the all of the others, you know. But it's it's a mixed bag, you know. So you know,
Yeah.
they voted me off, but if you were open to talking like one on one in a way that is, you know, not subject to mob rule, but is also respectful,
This is
hit
only
me up.
subject to like the vote once it's been a while. You know, I'll
Yeah,
like,
okay.
so like, and I wish I had more time to just have like private phone calls and stuff with people. But this
You
is like the
can,
time that
bro.
I
You
set
can.
aside. This is the time that I set aside to have these kinds of conversations because I love having them so much. Um,
Yeah.
I prefer them to be kind of like this. You know, I want to
Yeah.
get through to people. Thanks for receiving my
Yeah.
points, and definitely think about that argument against the creation of time for sure. When you're going to sleep, like say it to yourself over and over, and really think about it. You know,
Okay. I might even like pray with it. Fuck it. You know, like just be like, hey God, if you got like
just make sure
if
that
you're
when
not
you
who I
think about
think you
these
are,
things that you like check your bias too. Make sure that when you do this,
yes.
when you think about these
Yes.
things, you're wagering your faith. I think some people, they
Absolutely.
think they're wagering their faith, but they're holding on to it. You can only
Yeah.
get to truth if you wager your faith. If you value truth, then you ought do it. And if
Okay.
your faith is congruent with reality, the evidence should lead you back to your faith. When I did this, the
Interesting.
evidence led elsewhere. You know, so you have to be
Yeah,
willing
yeah,
to
no,
give it all up.
absolutely. Hey, can I ask like do you follow certain like biblical scholars or certain people that you or like what like personally for me, I'm a Catholic, so I don't agree with everything this man says, but I really like the oh shit. I've been drinking. I'm forgetting his name. He's an ex Mor. No, he's not an ex Mormon. He's a Mormon, and he's Dan McClellan. Dan McClellan.
Oh
Have you
yeah,
ever heard of him?
yeah. It's you would never guess he's Mormon, right? I'm
Exactly.
still
So
like astonished that
I
he's a
don't
Mormon.
agree.
It
I
feels
don't agree
wrong.
with everything he says,
He sounds like
especially
an
when it comes
atheist when he
to
talks.
yes. No. Like I will warn people. Like
Both sides. He
he.
said he jumped on the bed for him once.
I don't. I
That's
don't want to
funny.
know about that. But he like no, he is like from my Catholic perspective, personal, not all Catholics, but personal. He I think he has good evidence and good arguments, but what irks me the most is that sometimes he will make TikToks that will say, okay, well, I won't say that Jesus ever existed, but then like in his personal opinion, he does believe like there was a Jesus of Nazareth, and he'll like just kind of make these kind of arguments, and it kind of bothers me a little bit. It would bother me a lot less if he was just more like honest and said like, okay, this is my personal
Well,
perspective
I
on
just don't
things.
know. I don't know what to make of his Mormonism, to be honest, because with the way that how critical he
Well,
is and
yeah,
how
I
evidence
don't give
based
a
he is,
shit
I
about
just
his
don't get it. Like,
Mormonism.
anyway, man,
I don't
I
think
don't
he
want
gives
to
a
I
shit
don't want to
about it.
accidentally
Yeah.
prolong the conversation for a long time, but we
Yeah,
should you
that's
should
okay.
you
That's
should definitely
okay.
come back every Tuesday, Thursday, and I try to do a third
All right.
bonus day. That's like not specific,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
fucking.
check
It's
on it.
yeah. It's like it's a Thursday. Yeah, and I would love to see you again, talk to you again.
Yep.
Maybe we could talk on TikToks or whatever the fuck. Like
hmm
maybe we could have like a personal live where I don't have to get kicked off. You know, and I'm not blaming you. I I I
Well, if you're
understand
ever on a
that
panel or
totally.
something and I have time, send me an invite, and maybe I'll be able to join. So, but yeah,
All right,
man,
I
you have
love
a good
that.
night. All right. Yeah, that went on a little bit longer after the vote than I would have liked. He's just so pleasant, you know what I mean? Pleasant guests are hard to get rid of. Okay. Um There's two. Okay, I don't know who is next. I'm gonna bring up this person. Hey,
Yo,
Soulpath.
hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm going good. Thanks for asking. I hope you are too. Are you at least 18?
Yeah, I'm 34, so I'm a
Okay,
bit
cool.
older than.
Are you a Christian or any other kind of theist?
Yep, yeah, I would say I'm a Christian, but I'm definitely different to your. I don't go to church. I read the Bible, and I have some pretty whack ideas. I haven't fully finished the Bible either, so I don't know the full. I know the Gospels. I've read the first four books of the Old Testament. I've read a bit of Kings, a little
Fair
bit of
enough.
Job, and
You
stuff like
got the
that. But
gist. Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
um,
Okay.
so that's my kind of background. So how
Well, are
one
you a
thing
new Christian? Like, is that why you haven't looked at more of it? Or are you like kind of new to it? Or have you been in for a while?
well, my family has a big history in it. So like my family is Catholic, then they left the Catholic church and sort of became more like Protestant. You know, but my sort of parents sort of broke away. Like this, my grandparents were like staunch religious people, and then my parents kind of like were the 70s, party animals, kind of break away, do their own thing. They believe in God, but they don't ever pay respects or ever act like it. That
Right.
kind of boomer sort of life. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, anyway, man, I was listening to you in the conversation before about time and
Hmm.
how you see it. So like the sort of those cosmological arguments and things like that, and how you can't really see God in it, because if there was an act of creation, then that's a form of change, and then how can a state of an unmovable state have a change? Because that implies that there's some sort of process involved, something that's going on, which you
Hmm.
represent as time. And
Hmm.
so, have you heard of Christopher? What's his name? Longan, I think his name is. I probably butchered
Don't
that,
think
but he's
so.
like he's a Christian, but he is also a guy with an IQ of 190, and he came up with his own model, and he calls it the cognitive theoretical model of the universe. And basically, he says that the universe is basically like a language processor, and that the universe itself is God, and that
Oh,
it's
he's
just a
like a
different
pantheist.
sort of. But he created this model, so maybe people relate to that. Yeah,
Because I've
you know,
heard I've
this,
heard the position that the universe is God before. And if that's the case, I mean, I believe in the universe. So like if we're just gonna call it the universe God, then like yeah, I believe in God. Like you got me.
yeah,
But like that's not what people normally mean unless you're implying something extra than just the universe as we know it.
yeah. Well, like the universe is cognitive, like it's conscious. That's what he argues. So, like that's pretty hard to, I guess.
What's his
I mean, there is the
evidence?
argument of, well, there's like argument of design, there's precision, there's like just mathematical fine tuning, like that fine tuning argument. Um,
But like when
yeah,
you
there's
look
just a
into
lot of
space, you
precision.
see a whole bunch of chaos where things. I mean, yeah, like there's laws of physics that add a certain amount of uniformity, but we see just things smashing into each other and just seemingly undirected chaos bullshit going on out there.
Mm.
So I don't see this
Well,
like order. If there's
mm.
order, I would wonder what the design was meant to be, right?
Yeah, well, I guess my pushback would be then that every single thing that is in existence is come forward from a cause. So everything is causally related. So that
I
means
agree with
everything
that.
is.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that means there is some form of order, right? Even though it looks chaotic and like crazy, but you take the expansion of the universe. If it was just out by a little bit, nothing, no life would exist whatsoever. So what seems like chaos is potentially just us not being able to compute what's going on because it's such a complex system?
I mean, I agree with that. I'm hesitant to even use the word chaos because I don't believe in like true chaos or true randomness. I think that I'm a determinist, so I think that everything follows a causal chain. I think that one antecedent leads to a consequence, and I think there's only one possible consequence that can come of any given antecedent. I think that any uh, a spectrum of possibilities that's laid out is due to a fact of our lack of understanding of what is going to happen.
Hmm. So you know how science is kind of it's an incredible, well, it's a multiple discipline area, but it's amazing how much knowledge has been passed through in the scientific process and the exploration, but we also are stuck, and I don't know if we'll ever understand the laws that govern us, like, gravity. What is gravity? Like, we don't know what that is. There's no explanation for it. All we know is that a large mass attracts, smaller masses to it. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Like, what is
Well,
that?
yeah,
What
like
is that causal effect?
it like bends, yeah, it bends space time it toward its center of mass, and it would be a result of the gravitational field. And these hypothetical particles called gravitons would be the force carriers of that. And this is something that's like uh, theoretical for the moment, but like if our current models are correct, then those would be things that exist. And I think that's as far as I know, that's our furthest understanding of like
Yeah.
the mechanism.
But there's kind of these ceilings though where you hit, like, they call it like a horizontal, like, instead of like, sorry, not horizontal, more like a vertical chain of cause, which is the x of the universe's forces upon us right now in this time. So it's not like a linear time, it's a position on us right now, and those forces hit a ceiling. So they're not like finite, they are measurable. It's kind of the reason why mass and everything exists. Like our gravity right now is like, what's it, 9.8 meters per second, things like that. And obviously it changes, but it scales accordingly. You can that's why we know where, that's how we knew about Uranus and things like that. We discovered that through, Isaac Newton's understanding on gravity.
Mm.
And so it's just mathematical. It hits a ceiling. We know, okay, this is an objective truth. We can measure things out, and then we can actually find things that aren't observable through calculations. That's why math is so incredible.
Right, like that's how we discovered dark matter, was because of the same process you're talking about. We discovered gravity out there in space that otherwise should not have been there. So
Yeah.
we called it dark matter, that just for now. And yeah, it's pretty fucking amazing how we can use mathematics to learn about the universe and infer things based on mathematics, which is a language that we invented, right? Like a logical language that we invented to try to
I don't
understand
agree
the
with that.
universe. Yeah, and we can like infer things that could be true. I think so, like it doesn't always math doesn't always comport with reality, but it is amazing the discoveries we can make because of how refined the mathematical language is.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I'm sort of heading towards maths is I'm trying to show that, like, maths doesn't actually exist, right? Maths is kind of like, it's an abstract
Yeah, it's a tool.
understanding
It's
of it.
the language to help us understand and communicate mathematical truths that are
Yeah.
potentially real in reality, or that at least are logically valid.
Yeah. So maths helps us find stuff that's undiscoverable at the time, like, yeah, until we built I can't remember the telescope up in space. We didn't know about Uranus. We just said that they would have to be there due to the alignment of another planet because it was misaligned based on the formulas of gravity. So they figured out there must be a planet of about this density and this size.
Hmm.
And it turns out when they had the telescope that was correct. And so that was all abstract understanding of what is logical and true. So that means that life and existence that we live upon has a form of truth to it. And then so the leap here is that maths is an abstract, infinite, powerful. I wouldn't say it's a language. I would say it's more of something that we discovered and then coded. So you can use symbols to describe maths, but maths is always there. It's encoded in the whole universe. It's just how we read it, so to speak. So that's kind of going back to that Christopher Lang talking about how the universe is a cognitive model. It's a self-processing language.
Right. Well, math is a language because, like, if you got 2 apples and someone gives you 2 more, it's like it's not math until you say 2 + 2 = 4. Like that's you communicating the truth of the addition of those 2 apples to your already possessed 2 apples.
Yeah.
Like that's just how that's us communicating a mathematical truth. Like, what's a good way to put it? Like we're observing, a phenomenon in the universe, and we're using mathematics to explain it to one another. So in that regard, it is definitely just a language.
Yeah, but it's like a language that's always existed, right? The 2 apples are still always 2 apples, whether you speak
No,
Chinese.
the truth that it's based on would have always existed, but not obviously not the language.
Not the way we communicated to each other. But
like the plus symbol, right? Like the plus symbol, we came up with that. Yeah.
Yeah. But you push 2 apples together, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah. This and this is the same as this. Yeah.
Yeah. So now trying to change the topic a little bit, but staying on that train of thought, if there's an objective sort of truth to our universe, is there an objective truth to our consciousness and our being? And if the prompt there says God is evil, or who is God? In Christianity, right, we believe Jesus is God. So, or another way to think of that is God is the perfect. Jesus is the perfect mirror of God. He reflects God perfectly. And so my question to you is, do you think, is Jesus evil? If God is evil, is Jesus evil? From just the story of Jesus.
Well, if he's God, then I mean, yeah, but like only in a sense, because I think the Trinity is illogical. But there's another verse that or passage I could pull up to maybe suggest that, and I don't feel nearly as strongly about this Jesus being evil than I do about the God the Father guy being evil. But there's a passage I would love to read to you.
Yeah, sure.
So this is in the New Testament. It's talking about Jesus in here. This is in the book of Jude. And it starts in verse 5. It says, "Now I desire to remind you, though you are fully informed, once and for all, that Jesus, who saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe, and the angels who did not keep their own position but deserted their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains in deepest darkness for the judgment of the great day. Likewise, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which in the same manner as they indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural lust, serve as an example by undergoing punishment of eternal fire." So Jesus is cited in this book in the New Testament for being responsible for what in the Old Testament we were led to believe God the Father did. So if this is true, that Jesus was responsible for that, like God was working through Jesus, the Son, the Word, to do these things, then yeah, like I would say that's pretty, like these actions are evil in my opinion.
Yeah. So this is kind of how I reason with that. Okay. This so I would say that conscious beings to be, what is conscious? Like it's very hard to we can't really fully unpack what it means to be conscious. But what we do know is that consciousness has limitations. That's how we understand things. Like a knowledge gap as a limitation, and then you can fill it. Like if you do something wrong, whether it's immorally wrong or if it's just like a skill development thing that you did wrong. You learn because you had a limit, and then you can develop past that limit. So the idea of being conscious is actually colliding into your limitations, and then either like learning from them and going past them. And it's kind of like how I think of consciousness. So then when we look back, we go right back to Old Testament law. It's very barbaric. From our consciousness now, where our limits have surpassed that, we look back at the Old Testament and we go, what the heck is God doing? This is evil. Like, it seems evil. Everything, like not everything, but a lot of actions. And then when we read about, I think it's Elijah, and he says that he describes God as a small whisper. So in other words, the prophets have a form of connection with God in terms of consciousness. They believe they're being communicated to by God. But then remember, they aren't God. So their interpretation and their limitation is, so however they describe the law that's getting passed through them for their time hits this kind of limit. So we look at every single prophet up until basically Jesus, and they all create major sins somewhere. Like David is a good one. He like literally had someone unalived so that he could marry their wife. Like that, how wrong is that? And then like Solomon, he lusted and had all these wives, and then I even believe he allowed for idolatry and things like that at the end. So he fell majorly from the wise king that he was supposed to be.
So is your point that God in the Old Testament would have behaved a certain way for their understanding at the time's sake, whereas he would not have behaved that way today because we have a more refined understanding? Is that kind of the point you're trying to drive home?
So my point is that God interacts with prophets through the Old Testament, and through those prophets, so like Moses is probably the best example. He supposedly, God writes on these tablets, and he gives these commandments, and then Moses comes down and he sees his people that have had no guidance yet being wicked. And like, of course they're going to be wicked, right? Because they haven't had any guidance, and this guy's been gone up a mountain for over a month. And
So I'm just confused at the point. Because we were talking about Jesus. He asked if I think Jesus is evil, and I talked about that verse that passage in Jude, where like he would be evil if it's true what it says that he was responsible for this Old Testament stuff.
Yeah.
And then you started talking about tablets.
It's a long-winded. I'll try to shorten it down a bit. It's just because it's like complex, but basically, when we come to Jesus, like if you believe God is revealing himself in flesh, this is the Son of Man, this is the Son I'm well pleased with, this is God in flesh. If you believe that, then you take the actions of Jesus and how he represented the law. And then when you look at Paul and when you look at other people that preach, like even his own disciples and how they preached the words when they carried on the ministry, they are the point is that they are these limited creatures that are trying their best to grapple with the law of God. Now, Jesus, it's completely all through the four Gospels that he constantly preached an internal message, an inner transformation. He even said the kingdom of heaven is within. He says, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. And then it's like,
Right.
what does that mean? Well, it means to complete the law. It means to complete your understanding of what it means. And
It means to abide by the law. As far as like a Jewish understanding, since he was Jewish, he was talking to Jewish people. When they say fulfill the law, they mean like to obey the law and to abide by it.
So immediately after that conversation, after he says, I've come to fulfill the law, he does a big sermon and he says, you have heard it said, da 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 da, but I say to you, da 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 da. And he says that like multiple times.
Now, you know that when he says that, you have heard it said, da 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 da, he's quoting what was allegedly God. Like, you've heard it said that God said this, But I say to you, so that implies that like God was wrong back then, or at least they misunderstood God. Like this law that
Okay.
God gave you is not accurate, either because he changed his mind, or he was wrong when he said it, or you misunderstood it this whole time after all these years, all this time. But I'm gonna
No, so
correct it now.
yeah, so that's not no, it's actually not incorrect. It's the full understanding of it is now so like there's been a progression, right? Like that's why I was talking about conscious limit and then going beyond it. And so now the when Jesus comes down, his timing is perfect because he's the most known character. Even if you think he's fictional, right? He's the most well-known character in like all of literature, and he's like one of the most talked about, sung about, and et cetera, et cetera. And so
What was the
his law,
passage where he says this? Because I wanna
it's
you've
Matthew
heard it
5.
said, Matthew 5.
Matthew
Oh, it's
5.
that early? Wow. Hang on, let me go back
Yeah,
there.
it's like the very first gospel.
Da, da, da.
So I'm just going off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm probably going to misquote a little bit.
Okay. You have heard it said. You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable for judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment, and if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council, and if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the to hell of fire. So like that just sounds like Jesus is inventing thought crime. Like, not only is it bad to murder somebody, but even if you're angry with somebody, it's just as if you're murdering them. So he's like, it's almost like he's even worse than the Old Testament God, at least in this verse. Because
Yeah,
thought crime gives
I'm glad
people
you
tons
said
of anxiety.
No, I'm glad you said that. But why does it cause you anxiety? Then is it not true?
No, it's, well, I don't believe there's any such thing as thought crime. I think your thoughts are your own. You decide whether or not you're going to do an action by thinking about it. But if you
Yeah,
can't even, like, if thoughts are, if you think about something and you're liable for like hell and shit because you thought something. First of all, you can't even really control what you think. So like it's very stressful. You're trying to completely stop certain thoughts from even emerging out of like it's almost like a fear-based tactic for obedience. And it completely just, I think it undermines the severity of what's contrasted here, which is murder. Murder is very serious. We all agree that there. But when it comes to like being angry with somebody, I think it's a slap in the face to somebody who's had a loved one who was murdered. Like, you think that somebody being angry is the same as what that this murderer did to my family member, right? Like, that's obviously not of the same magnitude, not even close.
So like I feel like you have a bit of passion after reading that. Like it's kind of insulting and confronting a little bit, and I think that's exactly what he was actually trying to incite when he said these things. And the reason is because he's trying to get the law now internalized as a like the point of it is about justice and everything. If you can start to think of yourself as your persona that you project forward, and those inward thoughts are the actual key things you're trying to transform, then you actually will transform. Like it's if you like moral inflation. Like, have you heard of the word moral inflation?
I don't think so, but if it's like the things that you think about the most are the things you're going to be more likely to do, like to actualize or something like that. Is that what
I'll
it
sort of
is?
describe. So moral inflation is like you see something wrong and you go, that's evil, that's bad. My way is better. And then you like let's say you gather a movement. They go, yeah, I agree with you. These people and their laws and their ways, whether it's politics, right and left and whatnot. And you go, that's wrong. You overthrow it, and then you see this time and time again in history. The people that overthrow that position end up being equally as bad, and then some other form of movement comes along, and it's because it's a superiority complex, it's a moral inflation The problem why the cycle keeps on continuing is because the inward reflection is you're doing it for exterior gain. You're not
Oh,
doing it for the inward
I didn't mean to
development.
interrupt you, but this is the verse that I was looking for. Are you saying you have heard it said? Because there's several where he says you've heard it said right here on the
Yeah, it's
page.
like five or
But you've
six.
heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, which is something that God said in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer, but if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn also the other. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give your coat as well. And if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to the one who asks of you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. I think that's quite a difference. Like that's a stark change from the eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth thing. It's like the antithesis of it.
Yeah, it's almost a 180. It seems like a 180.
And this would be God refuting himself. If Jesus is God, then he would be saying the opposite of what he had said earlier.
Well, think about what I said about those limits, right? To begin with, having an equal playing field is like it's still within their law. He's still saying, try not to. If someone meets you, like if they take your eye, you take one of their eyes back. But usually the reaction would be you take an eye, you take 2 or 3 eyes. You know what I mean? Like you get so overwhelmed with wrath, you just wipe the whole village or whatever. It's not very equal in justice.
The idea was meant to be equal. Like one eye is equal to one eye, one finger is one finger, one life is one life. And that's equal. Yes. I think that's pretty intuitive. I think it's clear what they meant. But he's saying, but like not this. Instead, if someone strikes your cheek, turn on the other one. Like you don't strike them back. Like this is like as you were saying, it's like a 180.
Yeah, it seems like it. But remember, he is talking about you as an individual, though. He's not talking about you defending someone. He's not talking about you, creating justice or, if someone. It's not your place to forgive somebody else's wronger. If someone else did some wrong to, let's say, a family member of yours, you can't forgive on their behalf. It's for them to forgive. And Jesus says that being a servant is the greatest. Like and it flips everything. Because the whole idea of a king being a servant is much more powerful than a king being a ruler. And
I mean, I agree with that for sure, but I think that this is generally bad advice, if you ask me. Like, if you have a group of people that takes this passage very seriously, and I mean, they would all be pushovers. Like, if you had an entire society that was made up of these people, and you had somebody else who infiltrated the society and just was like, "Give me all your shit," I mean, they would be just overthrown by that. They would be doormats if they took this to heart.
But remember, it says that as you as an individual, not as you don't do that. Like, for example, right? Jesus got a bullwhip out and started whipping people in a temple because they were basically they were inflating.
They were selling stuff. They were soliciting in the temple.
Yeah. So, which is like, it's completely ripping off these people that came all this way to celebrate as the Passover, and so he showed righteous anger there. So it's not being a pushover. It's saying that.
Well, Jesus wasn't a pushover there. He was having a meltdown. He was kind of like having a temper tantrum. But like in this verse here. In this verse here, it's talking about if somebody strikes your face, you turn them the other cheek and let them strike that face. If they demand your shirt, you give them also the jacket. So yeah, that is being a pushover. Imagine if like somebody's like, "Hey, give me your shit." You're like, "Not only am I going to give you my shit, I'm going to give you this shit too. Like I'm not going to just give you my wallet. Here's my shoes." That's being a pushover. And if somebody infiltrates a society that's built on people that hold this value very seriously, as it's written on the page, they could just go up to anybody, get whatever they want, and they could take advantage over people who hold this philosophy.
I see what you're saying, but again, if you look at collateral damage, like you see how many terrorists are born from an act of violence, and like there's no breaking that cycle until someone turns the other cheek. And it doesn't mean that you don't, like I said before, it doesn't mean that you don't seek justice for wrongdoers, against wrongdoers that have committed crime or injustices against your community. It's about when the cycle happens to you, you should break the cycle. And that's the truth. I believe that's true. I don't think there is a non-truth to that. Like, I don't. How else do you break the cycle? Like, yeah, you may be uncomfortable with going, trying to show love to this enemy of yours who's like, really harassing and hurting you, and you're trying to only show kindness. You need help? Let me help you. It almost insults them.
You could show, you could break the cycle by just respecting justice, with the eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If this was justice at the time, which it is to an extent justice even today, we try to make the punishment fit the crime. It's not necessarily if you knock a tooth out, now we have this situation where the person who did that has to lose a tooth. We don't take it super literally. We don't exactly implement it, but we still agree that the punishment should be equivalent to the crime committed. And
Yeah.
if you accept justice once it's happened, that can break a cycle. Now, I think that this could also turning the other cheek could perpetuate a cycle, where once you have shown that you're just going to be someone that they can abuse, there will be a cycle of abuse, and you'll be the victim, and the advice of the Bible will keep you a victim.
Yeah, I see your point, but I would disagree, because I think the intelligent and genius part of what Jesus is teaching is that he said, I've not come to abolish the law. So he's not saying it's wrong to seek justice for an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but he's saying what's greater, what is correct inwardly. Because remember, his whole entire ministry is about changing people inwardly. This is the most truthful way to act. This is the most moral high. And if you follow me, I am the truth, I am the way, I'm the life. Like, and then you're trying to go against his teachings now, right? And it falls short, because, like I said, like, how do you break a cycle of violence then? Because you can't, because when two people that aren't within the same community of law, right? So if me and you live in the same, there's no war going on, then we've both signed up for a sort of justice. We have elected our government. Our government says this is the eye for an eye punishment. If you do wrong to me, and I say to you, what else do you need, brother? Here's my jacket. You need some money? I'll help you. And I give you only kindness and loveness, and you keep treating me like, you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna break you eventually. Most people are gonna have a change of heart, and I've even done this to myself with because I'm a teacher. Students that get very demanding of me, I just do exactly what they say, and then they eventually they start actually being very, very kind to me. And it's a very weird thing, because I feel like putting them down. I feel like saying, I'm the teacher, you're the student, shut up and listen. But I end up just helping them more, and then they end up having this change. And I just been doing that recently, and it's a pretty interesting.
I don't want to
thing.
diverge from the topic too much, but if you want to go back to Jesus, it seems like you wanted to focus on Jesus.
Yeah, well, because is Jesus evil? Because
Jesus,
you're saying
right? So Jesus,
is that evil?
right? Like, and as I said, I have more problem with the Yahweh, God the Father archetype than Jesus specifically. But if you want to talk about Jesus, we can. Jesus, he said, as you said a few times, he said he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. That law would include some pretty horrific things, such as slavery, for example. You're permitted to own and sell slaves. So Jesus would be not abolishing slavery, and by saying he's not going to abolish the law, he's going to uphold slavery laws.
So obviously there's distinctions between different, like, what is a slave? Like, there's a servant, like a worker. There's those laws, and I disagree with them. Like, they seem, I've read them, the ones where you're indebted as a slave for an X amount of years, and then you get your freedom. And if you marry another slave, they're under the master, and if you wish to stay married to them, basically you have to become a permanent slave.
You disagree with God's law.
So those. Well, Jesus, he does say that that's well, for one, it's always said as Moses's law. Moses's law is supposedly God's law. But then Jesus preaches this inward, and what he says about servitude is that you should be willingly a servant. He says it shouldn't be an obligation; it should be a willingness. So, like I said, it should be
Right.
something that you seek to do. He said, "Who's actually more powerful, the one that serves or the one that's being served?" And his argument was the one that served is much more powerful than the one that is being served. And you think about like the role of a parent or any kind of guardian. You're even being a teacher. You're actually there to serve. You're not there to.
Yeah. So like so basically he's okay with the ownership of people as property, which is something that I vehemently oppose. And even Paul, who would have come after Jesus, in Ephesians, says, "Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and trembling, in singleness of heart, as you obey Christ, not with a slavery performed merely for looks to please people, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from the soul. Render service with enthusiasm, as for the Lord, and not for humans, knowing that whatever good we do, we will receive the same again from the Lord, whether we are enslaved or free. And masters, do the same to them. Stop threatening them, for you know that both of you have the same Lord in heaven, and with him there is no partiality." So this seems like it was written by someone who wants to uphold the institution of slavery for both the for like the slave master, actually. So this is like disguised as something for the slave. Like, I'm talking to the slaves here, but it's for the slave master's benefit, because the slaves are going to hear this and think, I ought serve with happiness. That's what the slave master would want. And it's because you're going to get rewarded in heaven. So they don't even have to reward them in this earthly life. They can give them nothing in return for being taken advantage of and being tricked into giving this this like enthusiastic slavery service, which is pretty disgusting. And then they just get to say, well, in the next life you'll get compensated for this, or you'll get some kind of reward, because we're all slaves to Christ. And it even would like reinforce it in the next passage where it says like, stop threatening them. So this is kind of meant to help the slaves feel more at ease too. Like, it's supposed to, like, I think, set the heart attitude of a slave so they are content and even enthusiastic about being slaves. This is terrible for society.
But doesn't he go on? Okay, and I haven't read all of Paul's writings, but doesn't he go on to also write a letter about setting the slave free so that he can serve God, so that he can be
you're talking about Philemon, where he talks about this one specific slave being set free so that he personally can use him on his ministry. He's not talking about the institution of slavery in Philemon.
Yeah. So the thing is, right, and I don't have a good argument back for this. It's a good point. But Christianity has shaped out to really bring about the abolishment of slavery somehow. So I don't know where that and how that came about, but there's a lot of arguments to say that Christianity
coincides with the Enlightenment. So like we kind of got rid of slavery, I would say, in spite of Christianity, and there were of course like some Christian movements involved, but it would have been from something that is external to biblical values. There's nothing in the Bible that would suggest you ought free your slaves. There's there's so many passages where it permits slavery.
I guess my pushback, and look, I haven't done enough thought on this, but my pushback is the realms of economics that come about from atheism seems to be more in line with communism or socialism, which pours all the power to one leader and then everyone becomes a servant or slave to that one power. There's obviously North Korea, there's Stalin, there's all of that like just atrocious, forms of economics. And look at it's just a showcase that extreme slavery happens in an atheist frame as well.
I don't think. I mean, I don't get political on here, but that's not necessarily the view, right? That doesn't mean because I oppose slavery that I'm a communist or anything like that.
No,
It doesn't
of
really
course not.
matter
That's not
like what my viewpoint is on socialism or communism, because I think that opposing slavery is generally a good thing to do. I think it's a very like a I think it's a what the fuck is the word I'm looking for here? It's late at night. I think it's an altruistic thing. I don't think it's moral to own other people as property.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. But like I said, in history, there is examples of non-religious contexts where, like we see democracy rise predominantly first from Christian nations. So, like, why is that if the nations were predominantly Christian and they believed in slavery? So they obviously didn't. And if the framework is, if Christ is saying you should be willingly a slave, so that actually breaks the servitude mindset anyway, because you want to be a servant to your slave. So then, if you're both being servants to each other, you want each other to be free. So
Well,
you know what I mean? It's like a
I don't know what
deeper.
countries necessarily you're talking about that did this, but whatever you are talking about, if they're Christian countries that are abolishing slavery, it would be in spite of the Bible. It wouldn't be because of it.
But like I said, the predominant, like like founding people of America and stuff like that were like a Christian base. Like there weren't all these atheists that went over there and just were like, oh, we don't believe in God whatsoever, and then we made democracy. But they had a background.
A lot of them were
believed.
deists. There were some Christians, yeah, but a lot of them were deists too.
So my point is that you don't necessarily have to, like, for example, you could potentially go, you know what, I agree with what Jesus says, but I don't believe he's God. You could say that. And or you could say I agree with 80% of what he says, and I think for a society there are good things to live by, and that would still change your framework, even though you don't believe and you're an atheist. It still comes from a thought process of spirituality or the wrestling of God, which is the name of Israel, right? He who wrestles with God. So struggling for this idea of morality, it still comes from that lens.
When you put what, God? All of morality passes through one's own lens, like one's own personal filter. Like my value of my position on slavery is ultimately something that I've reasoned. Like I'm in a culture where it's wrong, so I'm like more predisposed to think it's wrong, of course, but like it still does pass through my own personal filter, so I make the ultimate judgment call. Now you said that you agree with me that owning people as property is wrong, and I think that's wonderful. I think that that's a great thing to say, but you would be disagreeing with God by saying that. There's nothing in the Bible that would be like a good passage for you to use to attempt to abolish slavery. Like if you went back in time to a group of Christians that were practicing slavery because it says you can in the Bible, you wouldn't be able to use the Bible to abolish slavery for them. They would have a litany of verses to promote slavery, and you would have zero against them.
From the Gospels and from the teachings of Christ, I could, because like it says, right, I would be going against the law as well. Then if I don't do an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, if someone does wrong to me and I don't seek equal, equivalent justice for myself, then I'd also be going against the law, right? But so he's showing a deeper understanding of the law, because the point of the law is not all this. Remember, Jesus is about inward transformation. So
Hmm.
there's all
So
this
he's
experience.
not talking about abolishing the institution of slavery. He's saying like the slaves can stay literally slaves, but on the inside they should be happy slaves who are satisfied with the fact that they're slaves and not try to get out. So he's, yeah, like, this is
Okay, then let me ask you this then: when you're a slave and you see another slave, how are you supposed to feel
if I
based
see
on what
another
Jesus did?
slave,
Yeah.
that sucks that we're both slaves. I wish neither of us were. I mean, that's what I would think.
So you wouldn't get the bullwhip out and start like trying to seek justice just like Jesus did?
I don't know. Well, it would depend on the circumstance. Like, if I felt that doing that could get us freedom, then I would do that. But, like, if it's just like an irrational move to do that, where it's just going to lead for more punishment for me, then I'm not going to. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that slavery is right, and you agree with me. But it seems like you're having a dissonance when it comes to what the Bible says about it, where your
I
values are at odds with the Bible.
So I guess what I'm trying to communicate, it's very hard for me to communicate because I'm not like like a psychologist specialist or something. But when you go deeper, right, you're saying that you're better than a slave owner, right? That's what you're saying. You go, I believe slavery is wrong. So the person that owned slaves back in the day, I am superior. I'm better than them, right?
In a sense, I mean, like, I give people of their time more grace than if somebody who is at a time today would, because I think that people are all products of their time, and I don't think that it makes it right. But I have a more of an understanding if you're from a time or place where something that was that we understand is wrong today was culturally normal back then. I mean, I understand there's nuance and there's cultural differences and stuff, but God would transcend these things. So God would be setting a law that we're reading about in the year 2026, and he never once decides to abolish it or even say, now in 2026 this is going to be bad, but for right now you guys can do it. Yeah, he doesn't do anything like that. He just says, sure, own slaves. Just make sure that the Israelites are treated fairly if you have them in an indentured servitude kind of thing. But even with that, you can still beat them. So it's like even treating them fairly, like beating them is still considered fair. I mean, it's
Yep.
really brutal.
Yeah, no, it is. But the thing that I'm trying to get across here is that when you start seeing yourself as better and more superior than the slave master, then it creates a form of um, like wrath towards the wrongdoer, right? You want to get justice and punish that behavior, and rightfully so. But again, what leads to actual transformation and change is the recognition that if you were in that position and you were born as that person, you wouldn't be any different. You know what I mean? Like, you have to recognize that you have the capacity within yourself to do wrong.
Mm, yeah.
And I think
No, yeah, like yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to say.
yeah,
When it comes to like wrath and retribution, I don't think those are productive. I think those are like natural responses that we have that are kind of primitive and like primal to our like existence and our biology and stuff. But when it comes to making social change, they're not productive. We want to aim for reform if we want the best, most efficient change. Show someone why owning slaves is wrong rather than just punching them repeatedly for doing so, especially if they were raised with the value system that it's okay to do. You know, if you were raised today in like America somewhere and you own some slaves, you have far less excuse for owning slaves than if you were brought up in a culture where it was okay, or that was the understanding that it was okay. It doesn't make it okay from my perspective. Like, it's still something that's wrong. But what we ought to do is stop the harm, end the slavery, and show the people who were owning the slaves why it's wrong. That's what we ought to do, I think. But God doesn't do that. God says you can just own slaves.
But what I'm trying to get at is that it did happen, and it happened first through Christian nations as opposed to those atheist ones. like I said, over in those communist countries where
Where's Cyber, real quick? Can somebody DM Cyber? He has like, he knows about the history of slave abolition, and he's always happy to explain. He's popped in here a few times. Let me see if I can, real quick. I wonder if he's even in here still.
you know those stories, just while you're doing that, you know those stories
Yeah.
of like slave owners, they end up like, you know, having kids with their slaves and end up, you know, treating their slaves like family, and then the other slave owners see it as wrong and then come and like take them out basically because it's like changing
Yeah.
the way things are done.
When God could have just said, "Don't own slaves," like it's the 11th commandment or something.
Yeah, but
Instead, it has
okay,
to go
like
through this long process of people still
I've
owning
got
people as property.
I've got a perfect one for you. You know the temptation story?
Are you talking about Jesus in
Yeah,
the wilderness with Satan?
yeah. Yep. So, you know, he says to jump off a temple in front of the temple city, and he says that the angels will catch you. It's been written, it's prophesied that you will be catched by these angels, and everyone will recognize your divinity. And he says, don't put your God to the test. And it's like, why not? Because if he just did that, then everyone would know, and then everyone would listen to him. But would that create actual change? Because now people just fear him because holy heck, you know, we just saw the sky open up and all these crazy creatures come down and save him. You know, of course we're in fear. We're
Do you
scared.
think that, well, this is completely besides the point, but like, do you think that, because we're talking about slavery and now it's about like what proving whether or not God's real. But if you want to pivot to this for a second, do you not think that God is capable of proving his existence to everybody without startling them?
No, you know, because I think the finite being that we are coming into contact with the infinite would break us. It would, you know, like it's like that idea of taking, you know, drugs and then and having an ego death and having a really really bad trip.
So
You know,
like
that's
when
what
Moses saw God face to face, you think he was broken?
To begin with, when he was rejecting it hard to begin with, and Aaron actually had to step up. If you remember the story, he rejected his mission. He didn't want any part of it. And then he said, you know, I'm illiterate. Why would you choose me? Da, da, da. And he's and this is just a supposedly.
But he was proven, like, before even all of that happened. He said, "You're stepping on holy ground. Take off your sandals." He took off his sandals and fell to his face, and he believed, and he didn't. I mean, he wasn't broken. He was even able to like rebut like some of the things he was saying. Like, you should go and talk to Pharaoh. He's like, "Hang on, I have like a speech impediment. I don't feel comfortable doing that." Like, if he was broken, I don't think he would be responding with a point like that. It seems like he immediately just recognized this thing as God and fell on his face in reverence. Yeah, like I think that's fine. Like, what's the issue with that?
Well, I mean, he didn't. God could have also just gone straight to Pharaoh, right, and just said, you know, let these people go. Otherwise, you know, I'm putting you all in hell. He could have just said that. Why
Yeah,
not just do that?
yeah. I mean, yeah, sure, he could have. There's a lot of issues with the story. I agree. Like, there's a lot of like more like rational things that God could do, but God's all powerful supposedly, and if He doesn't want it to break our brains that He reveals Himself to us, then He can just make it so that it doesn't break our brains.
So
Has anybody found Cyber? Yeah, I'm trying to get Cyber in here.
You know, how we learn. You know, like when we learn something, right? If I tell you something and you disagree with me, let's say I do 100%, I've got the truth. Just for a second, I tell you, but you reject the truth. I say, this is the truth. And then later on, maybe you decide to come to that truth on your own, you know, through whatever process that is. But all learning has to be done through yourself. I can't teach you anything. I can only guide you to the truth. And that's the truth that, like, as a teacher, I know this definitely. You can't teach a student anything. You can only guide them. You can only help them with the material. They have to be willing to learn. So, you know, that's the same thing. If God comes down and says he puts everyone in fear and they just do as he says because otherwise they're going to be punished, they ain't gonna learn on their own. They ain't gonna
Just
develop on their own.
don't punish them then. Like, I mean, like
That's exactly
I'm
what we've done.
God here. Like now I mean, like, can you see me on the screen? Can you see me?
Yep.
All right, I've just forced you to believe against your will that I have 5 fingers being held up right now. I didn't need to guide you that. I just showed you. God could show us and make it so that we cannot deny that he's God, and he could do so in a way that's mundane because he's God, so he can make it mundane, and we can all be like, oh, okay. And he could also say that if you don't want to follow me, I won't punish you for not wanting to be in a relationship with me, because I think that's weird and like wrong to punish somebody for not wanting to be in a relationship with them.
Hmm. But
Yeah, like I don't know why
what
that
the
would be
truth
the
is,
contention there. I don't know why that would be like even
he,
on the table. Just don't
he does do
threaten
that though.
people.
Moses comes to the Pharaoh as a brother, and he says, the God of my people has said this, and then he demonstrates God. He's like, starts with, I think, the snake, and then he goes, well, my magicians can do the same, and then they have this little battle, and the Pharaoh loses. He ends up losing his firstborn. That's the Passover. That's what is all celebrated, right? That's when he lets the people go. And then he even sees the sea parted. So, I mean, how much more evidence do you need that this man is telling the truth, that he is with God, and that he's speaking the truth? And he still doesn't listen. He won't accept the truth, will he? And it even says that God
Yeah,
gave,
but God would have given
God's
Pharaoh
hardened Pharaoh.
like so much more proof than he gives even someone like the likes of me. Like, how come Pharaoh of all people gets to see the sea split in half? How come he gets to see all of these crazy wonders? And not that I want God to kill my son. I mean, I think that was pretty fucked up that he did that. Not that I want God to harden my heart and cause me to like I don't want God to puppeteer me either.
Yeah.
But like at least
You
Pharaoh
don't want any of
knew
this,
that the
man.
God was real.
Yeah.
What?
So, I mean, the miracle that we get is Jesus. That's the point, like the resurrection, and like
Well,
there's
we
historically.
have a hearsay about that, but I mean I don't know why I would grant that necromancy is real because there's alleged witnesses to it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the pushback would be, you read the gospel, and do you agree with what Jesus is saying? And if you do agree with it, then he is a man beyond his time, and he lived and unalived within the law completely, and then supposedly people went to their graves in awful ways, not denying him. So, and like, I don't believe that people would go that far for a lie.
Oh yeah, well, people that
And
just means
it's
they were convinced
relevant.
of it. That just means they were convinced. It doesn't mean that it was actually true. There's plenty of people who will die for something that isn't true. I mean, think
Not
about
like that, though.
9/11. But as far as Jesus, I don't know that he was necessarily ahead of his time. He said some things that were pretty altruistic and admirable, like the golden rule, which is of course not a perfect rule, but a pretty good one, and that predates Christianity by a long time. He says all sorts of things that are not revolutionary, but people attribute to him as being revolutionary. I think you can get these altruistic outlooks elsewhere, and even if you get them from the Bible, you view them as altruistic or beneficial because it aligns with what you already think to be beneficial. You already value these things. So if you did not value the types of things that Jesus would have said, it would not hit you in the same way that he is some kind of altruistic great thinker. But if you agree with what he says, it does not mean that magic is real, let alone necromancy.
Like look, when I read the Gospels, I find it very confronting. I don't actually like what Jesus says, but it's hard for me to deny, and that's what I'm trying to point out. Like, I don't want to. I would way rather live with an eye for an eye, because I don't want someone to smack me around, and I don't want to feel submissive and weak. But then, what is that? That's my ego talking. You know what I mean? So, like, then I've got another problem.
Do you think that everything Jesus says in the New Testament is true?
And I think it's a collection of his disciples painting a picture of qualities and phrases that were close to what he would have said. So I believe that it paints even if they said everything wrong, the way they viewed him and the message that is portrayed through the Gospels is still in alignment because it's from different authors and it points to that similar message. So we get a very close ideal of who Jesus was and what he taught.
So, like, when the zombies show up in Matthew, what do you think that part is true?
I don't know. Like most of it is inward, right? So what does it mean? I have to analyze
Inward.
it and
It
look.
says, so it's talking about the death of Jesus in Matthew 27.
Mhm.
Starting in verse 50, it says, Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. So there's dead saints that came back to life and walked around the city and made themselves known to a whole bunch of people. This is the only reference to this in all of history. It's not even in any of the other gospels, the ones in the Bible or the ones left out of the Bible. There's no documentation of this zombie outbreak in any of history, and this would have been one of the most well documented things, I think, if it actually happened. But do you think that this is an accurate part of the Bible, or do you think that this is just some bullshit that was thrown in there for flavor?
I think I do think it's a bit of a shock value. I think it's trying to paint a point of the devastation that is the death of Jesus, this perfectly innocent person. It even shakes the tombs of the saints, that kind of language. But I wouldn't say it's literal for sure. I don't think that's true.
So you'd say that like the gospel writers are taking some creative liberties sometimes to make the story more compelling or interesting.
Yeah. So like, for example, Jesus may not have ever walked on water, but or maybe he did. I don't think it's really relevant. I don't think it.
Or maybe he
matters.
like never. Maybe he never did any miracles. Maybe he never rose from the dead. And that could have been a creative liberty.
Yeah, but maybe. But like, I still think if you just view it inwardly, I still think it's true though. Like, I still think it's like this idea that fiction can be more true than real life. And like a lot of like, you listen to Jordan Peterson and people like that, and like he can explain a lot better than I can about how these archetypical characters keep emerging through all of storytelling. They help us understand and learn about our own morality. And
if Jesus is a metaphor, that's a lot easier for me to swallow. Hey man, I gotta get out of here, but you're very cordial and stuff. I'll see you next time. Thank you for coming up.
Hey.
Don't mean to be so abrupt, but it is that time, and I hear the baby starting to wake up. So I should have given him a bottle already, but I'm gonna give him that bottle now. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. This has been a whole lot of fun. What do y'all think about this metal music? I like it. I think it's I don't know if it fits the vibe or not, but I kind of am digging it. If y'all like the style that I do this with, give me a follow. Give me your heart me if you haven't already. That helps the FYP, and it doesn't just help the FYP this time. If you do it and send one, you add to that like fan club number, so it helps TikTok know that I've like got some dedicated amount of following and whatnot, and it push me out. I do have a Discord server. That's where I was talking to one guest that we had earlier tonight, Parker. He came in here and was talking to me in the Discord server before, like a few days ago. So if you want to join the Discord server, there is a link in the bio. Otherwise, I go live on Tuesdays and Thursdays around midnight. Thank you for everyone who gifted. I appreciate you guys. I'll see y'all next time.
what is this? Sweet Chaos, I think. Sweet Chaos. No, Felicia won't. No worries. Felicia and Janet, we know them. I can just decline a refund if it's already been shipped. Well, I don't want to say too much just in case if someone evil is listening. I don't want to give them any ideas. But let's just say that I can decline a refund. This is not the TikTok shop, okay? We can decline refunds. And you don't always win in disputes. If you're being evil, then you won't win the dispute either. So I know Janet won't, and I know Felicia won't. So that's good. But we would never have won if this were a TikTok shop. So that's why we're not doing it there. That's the Sweet Chaos. I think this is the Sweet Meadow. Lisa, what was your question? Oh, we do ship to Canada, if that was your question. Yes, we do ship to Canada. And alrighty, there's a full moon. Full moon, what does that mean? Like evil stuff? Does that mean people are gonna turn evil? Okay, so here we've done it. And let's see, this one here is Suncatcher, Evil Eye, I think. Suncatcher, Evil Eye Pendant Large. Yeah, that's the Evil Eye Pendant Large. Will it be packed tomorrow? Right now, I don't promise. I don't promise it's going to be packed tomorrow, because if tomorrow is going to be as crazy as today, that just means the day after, we're still going to probably have like $100 left in queue, which is not something that I want to do. So we'll see how it goes. And if tomorrow is going to be slightly less crazy, yeah, order tomorrow for tomorrow's packing, but these stuff it's not guaranteed that they're going to be in stock, though. There's no guarantee that these guys are going to be in stock. And, okay, large, and here's the small pendants. Things are going to keep getting out of stock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But your orders are gonna be packed in the order that we received them. So tomorrow, if we didn't pack today's offline orders, we're not gonna start with tomorrow's first order. If we can't finish all the offlines today, then we're gonna do them tomorrow on the live stream, one by one. Yeah, I am going to be working tomorrow. Let's do the candy rose, 2 ounces of the candy rose. So if you order early, you will be packed early. 可以不用那个按照顺序，就往这儿拿就行。 Okay, so this one here, I think this is bubble pink. Bubble pink. Oh, I mean, I don't think you need to be too jealous. I know it's so fun to order and pack, watch me pack and stuff, but I know it's going to be a headache for Janet to organize everything. She has a lot of work ahead of her. Okay. See, we're like almost halfway done, guys. This is not bad. Candy Rose. Where is it? Where's Candy Rose? See, okay, Candy Rose. Okay, so here is the Candy Rose. And let's do the Pearly Sweethearts. 2 ounces of the Pearly Sweethearts. All right. Pretty sure this one here is New Year Fortune. I think that's the name of... Oh, did you buy Red Fortune twice? No, I think you got it twice. I don't know. I don't own a makeup business. I'm not a makeup artist, but I buy makeup like crazy. So, okay, Red Fortune. Here is the pearly golden hour. Wait, Fairy Garden? I think this is Fairy Garden. Yeah, that's gonna be a lot easier for me to pack, which is why I think we're gonna do that tomorrow. Which is we're only gonna have a few types of stuff on sale for the day and not having everything on sale for one day because it gets too crazy. This is way too crazy. Golden Hour I thought is another shade, no? Oh. Is that... But I feel like that's not exactly golden hour either. Is that golden hour? Oh, it is. Oh, it is golden hour. Whoops. Sorry. That is golden hour. That is golden hour. And Spacer Beads Silver and Gold. I think you got it twice as well. Janet, do you know that you got it twice? Do you know that? Silver and gold, 2 ounces. You were yeah, I thought so. It's okay. I mean, these are crazy things, you know, so it's okay that you got double. These things are gonna, they're useful, so you're gonna need it. 这个袋子帮我拿一个，我怕洒了，洒了。哦，在这 ，OK。Yeah, she got it twice. She got these spacers twice. I think. Or was it somebody else? Was that somebody else? Oh, you know what? I don't think you actually got it twice. This is 3 millimeters and this is 2. So that's actually different. That's 2 different. No worries, Janet. This, I think you're good. I don't think it was that doubled. It was okay. Suncatcher ball, 30 millimeters, 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There, that's good, right? That's good. All right, so here we have the Suncatcher Gold. I don't know if we're doing